When this guy wakes up after the regression, he instantly gets a system notification asking him to choose his class. But all that basic shit for losers isn't interesting to our boy. Instead, he gets up and heads to the hunter's market to buy a single ring with all his money. The saleswoman warns him that the ring is cursed and basically useless, but our guy knows it's hidden property. Ryoga puts on the ring, and dark energy immediately floods through him. His mind is transported to another dimension, where a massive constellation instantly attacks him. But no matter how much this god wants to, he simply can't inflict any damage on our guy because he's immune to mental damage. Ryoga easily passes the ring's trial and unlocks the rarest necromancer class, gaining the power to control the undead. Now he'll finally be able to take revenge on the 7 great families who serve the constellations. In his past life, they banded together to destroy our guy because he had reached the maximum 9-star rank completely on his own, without the constellation's help, and posed a threat to their power. Alone, he didn't stand a chance against them. But right before they finished him off, Ryoga fucked them up and used Kronos' watch to regress back in time. Our boy figures it's a pretty good start, but he isn't thrilled about only having 2 usable skills right now: Raise Undead and Bone Control. Since he's back in the past, his actual hunter rank is reset right to the very beginning. He takes a second to analyze his situation. Sure, he can use his necromancy knowledge thanks to the ring, but that won't let him bypass the strict level and star rank requirements established by the system. Under the standard system rules, a hunter can only reach 7 stars on their own. Reaching the transcendent realm of 9 stars requires something more, which means necromancy alone won't cut it in the future. To truly crush his enemies, our boy absolutely needs a constellation of his own. Later that day, Ryoga arrives at the ancient temple of Kronos. Kronos is a forgotten titan, a fallen patriarch who was locked away after being overthrown by Zeus and the other deities of Olympus. Standing in the ruins, our hero figures out that while this old titan, who is original owner of the pocket watch, is the perfect deity to approach right now. Without hesitating, Ryoga slams the broken watch onto the central tomb. The next moment, the entire scenery shifts. The temple lights up with a strange, otherworldly energy as the massive consciousness of Kronos manifests. Naturally, the fallen patriarch is pissed at our hero's insolence, but Ryoga just greets him politely, genuinely glad to finally make contact. What immediately catches the Titan's eye is the broken watch in Ryoga's hand. Kronos realizes this human is the one who just turned back the wheel of time. If Ryoga managed to regress, it means he was incredibly powerful for a mortal. Narrowing his eyes, the bitter old deity demands to know why Ryoga woke him up. Our boy has already thought this through. He knows exactly who he's dealing with: the father of Zeus, the titan who swallowed his own kids after hearing a prophecy, only to be defeated by Olympus and forgotten by the world. A deity like that is bound to be burning for revenge. So, Ryoga throws down a straight-up business offer. He'll help Kronos get his revenge on Olympus if the titan becomes his guardian constellation. Kronos doesn't take well to a mere mortal bossing him around. His eyes turn blood red with cosmic fury, threatening to crush our hero on the spot. But our boy is completely prepared. He calmly reasons with the constellation, pointing out that in his past life, he became a 9-star hunter completely on his own, without any divine help. Furthermore, Zeus, the arrogant thunderer, and the rest of the Olympian deities are already Ryoga's enemies anyway. Our boy doesn't just plan on destroying Dmitri and the Romanov family, he plans on wiping out all 7 great families. He lays out his opening move. He's going to destroy the Karamanys family, the powerful clan that hosts the constellations of Olympus as their guardian stars. By destroying them, Zeus and his pantheon will lose all their influence on Earth. Hearing this, a dark grin spreads across the Titan's face. Our boy officially has Kronos' full attention. The fallen constellation laughs right in our boy's face, mocking the revenge plot as a petty little goal, though the old Titan readily acknowledges the sheer talent required for a mortal to manipulate the temporal artifact. However, a massive obstacle remains, as the deity points out the fundamental mismatch between the pure divine essence and the dark paths of a necromancer, a path that actively violates natural providence. Instead of backing down, Ryoga counters that while a contract based on temporal dominion is impossible, utilizing the portfolio of the harvest changes the equation entirely. The mechanics of a constellation contract rely heavily on how a hunter's nature aligns with the deity's cosmic attributes. Since the ancient titan commands the scythe and the harvest, he inadvertently shares a symbolic bond with the concept of the Grim Reaper. Both the harvest and the reaper operate within the exact same cycle of death and rebirth, an existence that inherently operates outside the standard laws of providence. Having his own cosmic domain broken down by a mortal sends the deity into a furious rage, causing the ambient pressure in the ruined temple to spike dangerously. Our boy quickly reasons with the raging titan, making it clear that letting pride dictate his actions will only sentence him to remain a forgotten, fading relic, while the rulers of Olympus grow stronger. The alternative offers a mutual alliance to systematically dismantle Zeus, allowing the old constellation to reclaim his former glory. Ryoga recognizes that this gamble represents his absolute last chance. After a tense silence, the ancient deity finally relents, admitting that the desire for vengeance has never left his mind for a single moment. Golden divine energy begins to churn violently throughout the chamber, and Cronus warns our hero that reversing the flow of a constellation's nature to match a mortal will exact a terrible toll. Before Ryoga can fully brace himself, a massive torrent of raw divine power slams directly into him as a final test of endurance. Without waiting for consent, Cronus pours his essence into the vessel, officially designating our boy as his divine proxy, his chosen saint. The sudden influx of holy energy catches our hero completely off guard, triggering a violent clash within his body as the rotting attributes of necromancy collide with the pure radiance of a divine blessing. The conflicting forces threaten to tear his physical form apart, but our boy forces himself to withstand the agony, knowing that surviving the trial is the only way to secure his guardian star. Once the overwhelming pain finally subsides, Ryoga travels back to his hometown in Japan to recover from the strain. It isn't long before Cronus manifests right beside him, though the once massive titan has now condensed into a tiny, chubby, floating soul. The miniature deity stares at the modern cityscape, marveling at how the relentless march of time can be both magnificent and incredibly cruel, before casually asking our dude for his thoughts on the new era. Concurrently, the Global Hunter interface updates to show that the Titan has successfully re-entered the celestial rankings under a new title, the Harvester, the giant who defies heaven. Unfortunately, the grand title provides zero immediate benefits, leaving Ryoga without a single active blessing from his new patron. The lack of support stems from the Titan's status as a forsaken star, meaning that without a modern foundation of active worshippers on Earth, he possesses no ambient faith to convert into usable power. Despite the lack of juice, the mini-Titan seems entirely content just to be free from his prison. Ryoga realizes the burden falls on him to mold his guardian star into the specific concept of a Grim Reaper saint, creating the legendary anecdotes of defying providence that the constellation needs to restore his divine power. At that, Cronus notes that after sleeping for eons, a little restlessness is completely natural, reminding Ryoga that a saint's primary duty is to go out into the world and make his deity's name famous. This assignment puts our boy in a bizarre mechanical dilemma, as the contract has effectively forced a dark necromancer into the role of a holy priest. His status screen confirms the transformation, labeling him as the Saint of the White Knight and granting a 30% boost to holy efficiency. The massive upside to this strange hybrid status is the complete absence of penalties when casting his original dark magic. The system allows him to freely convert holy power into spirit power, granting him the unique ability to equip both priest-type and magic-type skills and gear. Furthermore, he unlocks a specialized holy spell called Life Drain, an ability that siphons the life force of a target and converts it directly into a physical stat enhancement, leaving his holy attribute completely tainted by death. While a typical saint relies exclusively on holy power and a necromancer relies on spirit power, the combination of two completely heterogeneous forces in a single hunter is entirely unprecedented. Our boy can't help but mutter about how absolutely broken it is to wield the peak abilities of both classes simultaneously. The floating mini-deity simply smirks, noting that the synergy was entirely intentional from the moment the contract was forged, since a saint is meant to be the ultimate reflection of their star. Relieved that Cronus actually thought ahead, Ryoga turns his attention toward putting his dual-wielding capabilities to the test, focusing on a dungeon gate that is right on the verge of opening, the Ancient Garden. Our boy heads straight toward the gate of the Ancient Garden. In this world, gates serve as dimensional rifts, generally categorized into two types: fluid gates that vanish entirely once the boss and core are destroyed, and fixed gates that remain open indefinitely. The Ancient Garden is a fixed gate with a baseline requirement of 1 star, making it the perfect entry-level hunting ground for a beginner. Ryoga looks around at the crowd of novices eagerly searching for a suitable party. In his past life, he was exactly like them, wandering around but never finding a decent squad to back him up. Right on cue, a party approaches him to offer a collaboration, but our hero flatly refuses. The scouts immediately doubt his ability to survive alone as a beginner, but one of the teammates reasons that if the newbie wants to go alone, it means he has the power. Ignoring their skepticism, our boy confidently steps through the portal solo. The moment he enters the Ancient Garden, the standard dungeon patterns play out exactly as anticipated. A lone goblin ambushes him from the brush, launching itself through the air. Ryoga cleanly sidesteps the trajectory, letting his future combat instincts take over. When the monster lunges a second time, our boy intercepts it mid-air, gripping its throat tightly. He activates his inherent class trait, converting his spirit power into pure holy power to channel Life Drain. During the channeling process, he notes that manipulating holy power feels almost identical to steering spiritual energy. The moment the absorption completes, Ryoga flings the desiccated corpse to the ground. The goblin's life force merges into his body, bumping his physical stats by a modest 0.5%. Since the system requires 5 full stat points for an early game level up, He calculates that clearing just 25 goblins will net him a clean level, an incredibly efficient ratio for a novice hunter. Floating nearby, the mini Cronus boasts loudly, demanding that our hero praise his divine greatness for granting such a broken buff. With one corpse secured, our boy wastes no time preparing his next move. He casts Raise Undead on the fallen monster, reanimating it instantly. Thanks to his advanced class compatibility, the zombie's degree of completion is remarkably high, causing its base stats to scale up by an impressive 97.2%. Ryoga realizes that this single puppet is going to make harvesting the rest of the ancient garden a total breeze. A moment later, the rustling bushes signal the arrival of a whole pack of goblins rushing his position. It's the perfect opportunity to field test his new asset. Ryoga commands the undead goblin to charge, and the creature rushes forward, aggressively biting and tearing into its own kind. The opposing goblins try to fight back, but they quickly freak out when their strikes fail to put the unyielding corpse down. Our boy watches with absolute confidence, knowing a low-level monster can't easily destroy an undead of this caliber. He steps into the fray, grabbing another thrashing goblin by the neck to trigger life drain. Once his vanguard finishes slaughtering the rest of the pack, Ryoga tests the skill on the fresh corpses his zombie left behind. To his amazement, he can use life drain even after a target dies, sending his stats climbing steadily higher. He decides it's time to speed up the process. Basically, an old maxim passed down among elite necromancers states that as long as they can defeat a single enemy, the battle is already halfway won. In other words, securing that first corpse is the only real hurdle. Once a single minion is under control, the snowball effect handles the rest. The system interface continuously blinks with alerts, informing him that the completion rate for his next 4 zombies is exceptionally high. His stats tick up one by one as the small squad pushes deeper into the cavern, systematically wiping out every green skin in sight. Our boy can't help but admire the sheer efficiency of the necromancer class, as his growing undead army harvests stats and turns fresh casualties into loyal slaves. However, the floating mini-titan chimes in, reminding his proxy that a true divine warrior should still exercise caution during a dungeon run. Ryoga just smiles, reminding Cronus that this ruthless efficiency is exactly how a necromancer fights. Before long, his squad reaches a total of 20 undead, the absolute maximum cap he can command at his current stage. Ryoga orders the full platoon to rush ahead, overwhelming the local monster dens in a synchronized sweep. Right as his vanguard corners the next pack, a flaming arrow streaks out of the shadows, striking one of the targets. Ryoga instantly halts his undead army, his eyes narrowing as he demands that the hidden archers show themselves. 3 figures step out from the brush, the exact same party that had tried to recruit him at the entrance. The leader steps forward, eyeing the horde of zombies with deep suspicion, and demands to know our boy's real identity. Looking at their faces, our hero's expression goes completely dark. He recognizes them now. They aren't just random novices. They are the notorious Twin Shadow Hunters, the very same team that tried to assassinate him in his past life. The Twin Shadow Hunters, Yuma and Yuka Rendo, are fraternal twins. In his past life, it was such a massive pain to fight them. But our boy just smirks right now because, honestly, they don't look strong at all. It makes sense, considering they're only 1-star hunters at this stage in this timeline. Back then, they were a duo, not a trio like this current squad. The mini-titan Cronus chimes in, whispering that it's better to just kill his future enemies ahead of time. But our boy isn't sweating it. Since these guys haven't been tasked with his assassination yet, they don't actually hold any hostility toward him. Right then, the team leader asks Ryoga about the zombies he's controlling, since the necromancer class isn't widely known yet. Ryoga just plays it cool, claiming they're his unique summons. Meanwhile, our boy's brain is working. He needs someone to carry his baggage and loot, and since most people become hunters just for the cash anyway, he decides to offer them a deal to become his partners. He needs someone to handle the mana stones, so he offers them an 8.2 split. Since Ryoga will be doing 100% of the heavy lifting and monster slaying, the Twin Shadows can just sit back and earn easy money. The trio just stares at him, completely stunned. After a second, they huddle up a little further away to talk it over. The sister Yuka warns the leader not to trust our guy, pointing out that nobody has ever heard of someone summoning zombies. Ryoga is honestly getting bored because their little discussion is taking forever. Finally, they walk back over. The leader wants to push for a 5.5 half-and-half split, arguing that even with that, each member of their 3-man team will only walk away with about 1.7. Our boy shuts that down real quick, finalizing the deal at a strict 7.3 ratio. Take it or leave it. The leader Yuma takes a look at the zombie army, sighs, and finally agrees. The third team member, Haibara, looks incredibly uneasy about the deal, but Yuma quickly reassures him. He whispers that if Ryoga actually wanted them dead, their corpses would already be rolling on the floor. Yuma calmly analyzes the situation, noting that our boy entered the gate without a shred of standard hunter equipment, a level of confidence that screams he's secretly a massive big shot. Yuma figures following him is a surefire way to make some serious cash. Cut to a few hours later, and the twins along with Haibara are absolutely exhausted from the brutal labor of harvesting mana stones. Yuma stands next to a small mountain of glittering monster cores. While he expected a decent haul, the sheer volume of loot is completely beyond his imagination. Meanwhile, our boy is busy draining the life force out of another batch of goblins, casually instructing the team to keep stripping the stones from the fresh casualties. Yuma requests a short break. Ryoga is so absorbed in micromanaging his vanguard that he doesn't answer right away. After a beat, he happily grants the break, telling them there's no need to rush. The trio just looks at him with mild annoyance, silently questioning if this guy is even human. With the area temporarily cleared of active threats, Ryoga checks his character sheet. His total stats have surged by 21.2% over the course of just 3 hours, making his current power output equal to a level 4 hunter. He is genuinely impressed by the broken efficiency of life drain. Having effectively smashed his early game leveling goals, his mind shifts toward taking down the boss monster. Right on cue, the brush part to reveal the goblin shaman, the self-proclaimed king of the south, marching in with a massive reinforcement army. Our boy instantly mocks the green-skinned monster, prompting Yuka to frantically warn him not to provoke the shaman. The boss screeches a command, ordering his minions to crush the arrogant human and force him into submission. But Ryoga just gives the signal, ordering his undead platoon to feast on the living horde until nothing is left. A chaotic clash erupts between the living and the dead. One agile goblin manages to completely destroy one of Ryoga's zombies, but our boy doesn't even blink. He instantly targets a fresh corpse to fill the empty slot. The newly raised undead goblin tears itself off the ground and immediately rips the arm off its living counterpart. Yuma watches the madness unfold, completely awed by how Ryoga's team is holding the upper hand despite being heavily outnumbered, finally realizing the true terror of a class that turns casualties into instant reinforcements. Seeing his frontline crumble, the goblin shaman begins chanting a dark spell. A bloodthirsty crimson glow fills the eyes of the living goblin army as a wave of artificial morale boosts their stats. The boss cackles arrogantly, confident in his unique totem staff that simultaneously buffs his allies and inflicts heavy debuffs on his enemies. Yet, our boy just smiles, standing right behind his frontline vanguard. In fact, one of Ryoga's sneaky zombies has already maneuvered through the chaos and is currently gripping the shaman's precious totem staff. The boss looks down, completely baffled that a human-controlled summon dares to touch his sacred artifact. To taunt him further, Ryoga commands his minion to twist the shaft. The staff pins into the dirt, and our boy's zombies systematically hammer into the goblin ranks, fracturing their formation. Frustrated and desperate, the shaman immediately activates his ultimate trump card, the Madness Incantation. Instantly, the remaining goblins go completely berserk, their strength and agility skyrocketing by a massive 50%. The sudden power spike catches the vanguard off guard. The frenzied monsters begin tearing through the summons, rapidly reducing Ryoga's front line until he has only 8 active undead left. Looking at the mounting mess, Ryoga calmly isolates the source of the problem. The boss's power relies entirely on that staff. The shaman, letting the temporary victory go to his head, stupidly mocks our boy, bragging that the totem is forged from sacred bone and infused with the eternal grudges of the goblin race. That specific piece of lore is exactly the oversight Ryoga needs. Our boy's face twists into a dark smirk as he activates bone control. With a sharp jerk of his hand, the bone staff rips itself clean out of the shaman's grip, flying across the cavern straight into Ryoga's waiting hand. The sudden theft forces the Madness Incantation to abruptly cut off. The boss stands there completely frozen, totally baffled by the stunt. To make matters worse for the monsters, the sudden cancellation of the spell triggers a severe magical backlash, causing the remaining goblins' strength and agility to plummet below their baseline stats. Holding the prize, our boy looks down at the shivering shaman and mockingly dares him to try casting his little incantation one more time. Holding the prize, Ryoga notes that the response time of the bone staff is significantly faster than that of normal skeletons, a direct result of the dense grudges infused within the artifact. Tilting the weapon so the sharp end faces the shivering shaman, our boy uses his bone control to drive the staff straight through the monster. He immediately triggers life drain, absorbing a torrent of energy that sends his stats climbing far higher than anything he gained from the standard goblins. As the absorption concludes, his eyes widen slightly. He steps forward to carefully harvest the boss's blood, ensuring he drains every drop of the potent life force. Turning back to his vanguard, he casually instructs the exhausted rookies to handle the tedious cleanup. The trio looks out at the green-skinned massacre, completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of corpses they now have to strip. A short while later, the 4 of them step through the gate of the ancient garden. The 3 teammates look absolutely dead on their feet, completely drained of energy. As they drag their massive haul into the staging area, onlookers begin to murmur in disbelief, wondering how a mere 4-man squad managed to harvest such a massive mountain of monster stones. Ryoga turns to his team and asks if they should just sell the loot directly to the market shops in Natsuhabara. Yuma suggests transporting the haul themselves to secure a much better market price, asking our boy if he trusts them enough to handle the transaction. Ryoga playfully scoffs, pointing out that they only met today, so trust is a bit of a stretch, but he quickly laughs it off as a joke and gives them the green light to handle the sale. Yuma estimates the total haul will bring in a clean 6 million credits. Before they split up, our boy takes out the shaman's bone staff to inspect it. Yuma speaks up, warning him that the weapon is practically useless for standard hunters due to its contradictory class requirements. The system restricts the staff to priest classes to boost holy spells, yet its innate enchantments amplify spiritual power, an attribute that priests naturally cannot wield. It is the absolute perfect weapon for our boy, who uniquely commands both. Ryoga decides to keep the artifact, telling Yuma to just deduct the cost from his share of the profits. However, the twins and Haibara flatly refuse to take his money, arguing that they only secured this massive payday because of his overwhelming carry in the first place. The entire team quickly nods in agreement with their leader. Our boy finds himself genuinely liking their squad dynamic, looking forward to working further with these particular rookies. The next day, the cooperative hunt continues. However, it isn't long before the rookies are completely wiped out from the brutal labor of hauling stones. They openly complain about their bags being completely full and suggest calling it a day. Ryoga casually gives them permission to head back to the city, while he takes a detour to continue hunting solo. Floating nearby, the mini-titan notices the intentional move, realization dawning on him that our boy orchestrated the split on purpose. For his next goal, Ryoga absolutely cannot afford any witnesses. Our hero heads directly toward the northern wetlands of the ancient garden, a high-level zone dominated by massive, predatory frogmen. He commands his undead goblin squad to launch an assault, but the amphibious monsters quickly gain the upper hand. Ryoga anticipated the struggle, knowing these creatures possess significantly higher baseline stats than the goblins. As his zombie vanguard gets picked apart one by one, he uses bone control to hurl the stolen staff directly at a nearby frogman. However, the monster's thick, oily hide acts as natural armor, drastically dampening the physical piercing damage. The frogman lets out a smug smirk, which thoroughly irritates our boy. In response, Ryoga drives the staff deeper into the creature's flesh, infusing the strike with raw spiritual power to force a massive piercing critical. Using the staff as his primary offensive weapon, he begins systematically hunting down the amphibians one by one. The heavy toll of maintaining his remaining undead while simultaneously controlling the floating weapon burns through his reserves, dropping 35% his spiritual power. Wasting no time, he casts his reanimation spell on the fallen frogmen, a process that drains his remaining spiritual energy down to 20%. Despite the heavy sweat pouring down his face, our boy remains completely confident he can handle the strain as his newly raised amphibious vanguard begins slaughtering their own kin. By the time he finishes the job, his rapid hunting method pushes his level all the way up to 16. Our boy feels the steady return of his peak strength, silently challenging his future executioners to wait for him, promising to cut them down much sooner than they think. A short while later, he moves to a secluded cavern, carrying a harvested frogman heart. Cronus hovers closer, demanding to know the grand strategy, but Ryoga tells the mini-titan to pipe down so he can maintain absolute concentration. His plan involves dropping the collected goblin shaman blood directly onto the core of the frogman heart. By combining the essences of the dungeon's rival factions, he triggers a hidden environmental trigger, a secret anomaly of the ancient garden that absolutely no one detected in his past life. Instantly, the cavern system warps, transporting him directly into the ancient proving ground. Our boy looks around the legendary trial zone, an area he never managed to unlock during his first run. Right on cue, a massive set of armored feet tears through the dimensional rift. A system alert flashes, informing him that the proving ground enforces a strict solo player limit. The trial demands that the challenger prove both their cosmic potential and raw courage. The smoke clears to reveal the full, terrifying silhouette of his opponent, a massive, high-tier Dragonian warrior. A countdown timer appears in his vision, giving him a strict 10-minute limit. To clear the trial and claim the ultimate reward, our boy simply has to survive the onslaught until the clock runs out. The ancient proving ground is actually a specialized layout designed by the constellations to scout out elite human hunters, serving as a direct pipeline to the prestigious Dragon Legion. The specialized combatants stationed within this dimension exist solely to test incoming challengers. When the system notification flashes the objective to survive the gauntlet for 10 minutes, Cronus immediately scoffs, taunting our boy that he won't even last 10 seconds. The mini-titan even cracks a joke about having to look for a brand new saint to replace him, which thoroughly irritates our hero. Ryoga ignores the chatter and analyzes the mechanics of the trial, realizing that while the Dragonian's raw power is systematically scaled down to match a 1-star entry rank, the upcoming clash will be anything but easy. The scaled warrior charges forward, but our boy halts the advance by casually gesturing for him to wait. Turning his back on the enemy, Ryoga focuses entirely on his undead vanguard to initiate a rapid modification, jokingly noting that even iconic villains have the decency to wait for a protagonist to complete their transformation sequence. He channels cadaverous poison plague blood directly into his summons. The flesh of the undead bubbles and warps, instantly transforming the standard vanguard into toxic plague zombies. Even the old titan is visibly impressed by the seamless mid-combat upgrade, prompting Ryoga to smugly remind Cronus that he didn't hold the title of a master necromancer in his past life for nothing. Turning back to his opponent, our boy gestures that the match can officially begin. The Dragonian grits his teeth in frustration and lunges, razor-sharp claws aimed directly at our hero. Before the strike can land, the entire platoon of plague zombies dogpiles the warrior, attempting to tear into his scales. The monster cleanly punches one of the ghouls away, but a highly corrosive level 12 acid instantly sticks to his claw. Ryoga had deliberately sacrificed the physical strength stats of his frogman, which had already doubled upon reanimation, and converted that entire mass into pure, concentrated toxicity. As the venom seeps into the warrior's system, his agility and strength stats begin to plummet. With a roar of raw willpower, the Dragonian uses a massive burst of internal energy to blast the clinging zombies away, locking his sights right back onto our hero. Ryoga stands his ground, inwardly admiring the monster's durability for surviving a lethal dose of his custom plague. For his next move, he raises the Staff of Grudges, infusing it with a heavy surge of spiritual power to maximize its defensive threshold. The Dragonian smashes directly into the barrier with enough brute force to shatter the shield completely. But that structural collapse is exactly the opening our boy was waiting for. Utilizing bone control, Ryoga launches the staff forward, driving the sharp bone fragments straight through the warrior's hand. With the boss effectively pinned, the zombie horde swarms right back over him, aggressively biting and tearing at the weakened target. The resilient warrior fights back desperately, completely crushing another undead frogman in his grip, but our hero can see that the opponent has finally hit his absolute limit. With a heavy thud, the Dragonian collapses to the cavern floor. Ryoga recalls his bone staff, seamlessly converts his active spiritual power into pure holy power, and unleashes Life Drain to harvest the fallen boss. A grand system alert confirms his successful clearance of the ancient proving ground, leaving Cronus thoroughly stunned that a mortal managed to solo a member of the dragon kin at this level. Our boy ignores the floating soul to inspect his official clear reward, the Crest of Endurance. This rare passive buff functions by delaying 40% of all incoming damage, while simultaneously boosting his mana realignment speed by 20%. While the reward is undeniably top tier, a true necromancer knows the real prize is the pristine corpse of a high-grade Dragonian warrior. Ryoga immediately forms a blueprint to turn the carcass into a specialized summon that will completely transcend its original living form. To execute a high-level reanimation of this caliber, however, he requires a specialized set of advanced alchemical tools. Fragments of his memory guide him to a brilliant but eccentric alchemist from his previous timeline who ran a research lab. Calculating that the man must have already established his lab in this current era, our boy travels directly to Kishu Prefecture. The storefront stands in the exact same rundown condition Ryoga remembers from his past life. Right on cue, a loud magical explosion rocks the interior, sending a thick plume of smoke through the doorways, a chaotic confirmation that the alchemist hasn't changed a bit. Coughing violently, the eccentric alchemist finally stumbles out into the fresh air. This disheveled man is none other than Renya Shinya, the future legendary pioneer who will eventually discover the formula for the world's most famous, mass-produced mid-tier potion. Ryoga steps forward to introduce himself, casually asking to borrow the facility's high-grade alchemy tools. The bespectacled shopkeeper frowns, thoroughly unamused by a random rookie treating his private research lab like a rental shop. Our boy quickly sweetens the deal, confidently stating that the arrangement will be mutually beneficial since he can help Renya stabilize his current failed potion project. Renya freezes in absolute shock, completely baffled as to how a total stranger could possibly know about his highly confidential, volatile research. Ignoring the man's suspicion, Ryoga pushes past him into the lab to get to work. A few minutes later, our boy leaves the alchemist completely speechless by perfectly stabilizing the volatile concoction right in front of his eyes. Ryoga effortlessly utilizes the exact advanced compound method that Renya himself isn't scheduled to discover for another several years. To field test the results, our boy takes a small blade, makes a clean cut across his own forearm, and pours a few drops of the stabilized liquid directly onto the wound. The potion instantly bubbles against his skin, rapidly knitting the flesh back together until the arm looks completely unblemished. An ecstatic grin spreads across Renya's face as he frantically lunges forward to grab the priceless vial, but our boy smoothly slides the potion out of reach, keeping the leverage firmly in his hands. He already knows that Renya is practically burning with curiosity over the advanced formula used to stabilize the brew. Ryoga offers a clean trade, the secret to the perfect potion sequence, but only if the alchemist agrees to help him out with his own project. Initially, our boy only comes here to borrow some high-grade alchemy tools, but he quickly spots a perfect opportunity to recruit another helpful asset, or rather, a new slave. He offers the alchemist a joint partnership, promising to share his advanced recipe and future compound knowledge in exchange for a 60-40 split on the potion royalties. Naturally, our hero generously agrees to take the smaller 40% share. Watching the sheer temptation flash across Renya's face, Ryoga already knows the eccentric scientist has fallen right into his trap. Renya hesitates, ultimately agreeing to let Ryoga use the facility's workspace but stubbornly holding out on the rest of the terms. Our boy doesn't sweat it. He reaches into his storage ring and pulls out the Dragonian warrior, which instantly makes the scientist's eyes pop with extreme curiosity. Ryoga casually lures him over, inviting him to take a closer look and help out with the preparation. But Renya angrily snaps back, reminding our boy that they don't have a contract yet, so the lab space is the only thing he's getting for free. Floating nearby, Cronus comments on the mortal's high level of caution. Knowing the bespectacled man's tragic backstory, Ryoga notes that it's entirely understandable for him to be so vigilant. In his past life, Renya worked for the Diesel Corporation, a top-tier research conglomerate. However, his corrupt boss stole all the credit for his groundbreaking work, forcing him to resign in disgrace. That betrayal is the sole reason behind his absolute distrust of others. When Cronus mutters about how the human world is full of pure selfishness, our boy reminds the ancient titan that the world of constellations operates the exact same way. Turning back to his target, Ryoga urges the alchemist to help him out anyway, noting that this project is the perfect chance to see if our boy has enough talent to be a worthy partner. Seeing no real harm in it, Renya takes the tools from Ryoga's hand, and both of them get straight to work. Before long, our hero is passing instructions, accidentally turning the poor scientist into his personal lab assistant. Renya follows the commands perfectly, first melting down 5 F-rank mana stones at a precise ratio of 42%. The flawless execution makes Ryoga realize this nerd is absolutely perfect for the job, while the nerd in question babbles with curiosity about what our hero plans to do with a giant lizard carcass. Using the customized liquid Renya just created as a catalyst, Ryoga uses bone control to carve intricate magic formulas directly into the beast's skeletal structure, instilling them with layered curses to drastically enhance the future undead's performance. For a high-tier reanimation like this, the formulas and curses need to be layered multiple times. The duo repeats the exhausting process over and over, working tirelessly for 3 straight days until they finally cross the finish line. Our boy casually comments that they finished much sooner than expected, which immediately makes his sleep-deprived nerd assistant protest in absolute exhaustion. Meanwhile, Renya is thoroughly confused about our hero's true identity. The guy is supposed to be a mere 1-star rookie, yet he just successfully restarted the dead beast's heart using sheer concentrated mana. Ryoga's methods completely defy standard hunter common sense, but his undeniable skill speaks for itself. Finally, after thinking it over, Renya gives in and agrees to work with our boy, officially signing on to the potion royalty deal. The alchemist admits he spent 2 whole years trying to finish a basic mid-grade healing potion, but he's suddenly confident that he can change the world alongside our hero. Ryoga is more than happy to welcome another loyal slave into his company. Now his next macro step is to secure the core soul of an eldritch dragon. Right on cue, his phone buzzes. It's Yuma. The loyal rookie has already wired every single penny from the Mana Stone sale straight into Ryoga's bank account. Our boy decides it's time to give his favorite vanguard another job, so he calls them out to a dense forest near the border. The rookie party follows him into the thick woods, but Yuma can't help but question the sketchy choice of destination. Ever since the northern gate collapsed, this entire region has been crawling with dangerous, high-level monsters. Ryoga just gives an ambiguous answer, casually stating that he's just dropping by to visit an old acquaintance. As they push deeper into the forest, a massive 2-star orc steps out of the brush, causing the rookie party to instantly panic. Our hero is mildly annoyed that they still doubt his capabilities, but he figures this surprise encounter is the perfect chance to test his newly processed bone weapons. These ghoul bones are specialized magic tools he created by infusing raw spiritual energy directly into refined skeleton shards. Utilizing bone control, Ryoga shoots a sharp bone shard through the air like a bullet. The orc reacts quickly, deflecting the projectile with its heavy spear. However, the monster mistakenly assumes the attack is over. Since Ryoga can telekinetically steer the shard from a distance, he snaps his fingers, twisting the bone midair so it drives straight into the orc's shoulder. Ryoga was actually aiming directly for the heart, but the monster's thick, calloused hide forces the projectile to miss the vital spot. Enraged, the orc tears the bone out of its shoulder, flings it aside, and charges straight toward our boy to force close-quarters combat. Yuma leaps forward at the absolute last second, raising his shield to block the incoming swing. With the monster temporarily stationary, our boy launches 3 bone shards simultaneously instead of just 1. The projectiles easily pierce the orc's vital points, killing it instantly. Yuma stands there completely taken aback, awed that a rookie just casually dismantled a 2-star monster. Ryoga quickly snaps him out of his daze, letting him know that the real work is only beginning. Yuma blinks, remembering our boy's earlier comment, and asks who exactly they are supposed to be meeting out here. Casting his reanimation spell to raise the dead orc into a zombie puppet, Ryoga looks toward the dark valley and casually answers that the acquaintance he wants to meet lives right inside the local orc settlement. Our boy sweetens the pot, casually adding that this raid is the perfect opportunity for the rookies to make some serious cash. Over the next 3 days, the group systematically clears the woods, leaving a trail of dead orcs in their wake. The intensive grinding pushes Ryoga's level up to 13. However, his stat harvesting hitting a soft cap. He has absorbed so much residual energy from the local orc population that his system can no longer extract any passive stat points from them. Realizing he can't just farm the same monsters for infinite stats, he calls an end to the hunt for the day. He orders his vanguard to set up a camp, but the party is way faster than he anticipated, having already pitched the tents before he even finishes the command. Over the campfire, our boy informs the party that his current stats are more than enough to handle the main base. Tomorrow they infiltrate the heart of the settlement. The rookies are totally on board, happily leaving the night watch duty to Ryoga while they head into their tents to sleep. Our boy uses the quiet hours to hunt down a few more wandering orcs for raw materials. With the camp secure and some free time on his hands, he decides to dive into the newly unlocked archives of his system, the Library of Knowledge. This interface allows him to view the forbidden insights left behind by the previous Lord of Death. However, the moment he pulls a high-tier grimoire from the virtual shelf and tries to read it, the system blocks him. A prompt flashes stating he needs to be level 45 or higher to access the advanced contents. The restriction thoroughly pisses him off, making him curse his current 1-star limitations. Left with no choice, he settles for the basic manuals permitted at his current rank. By the time he finishes reading, the system blinks with a notification. He has successfully acquired 2 brand new skills. The next morning, Haibara wakes up and immediately shrieks at the sight of the undead orcs standing guard. Yuma sighs, reminding his teammate that they literally see these zombies every single day. However, as Yuma takes a closer look, even he notices the minions look completely different. They are noticeably larger and sturdier than before. Ryoga confirms the observation with a smirk, explaining that he modified the puppets overnight, evolving them into a 2-star armored zombie variant. The upgrade grants them superhuman physical strength and wraps their bodies in bone plating to drastically maximize their endurance. Our boy achieved this by combining the 2 skills he acquired during his late-night reading session. The first is bone armor, which allows him to compress skeletal matter into protective plating. The second is flesh writhing, a gruesome utility skill that lets him manipulate detached tissue and graft it directly onto a corpse. With his vanguard fully upgraded, it's time for the squad to head straight into the orc settlement. By dusk, the group reaches the perimeter of the tribal village. The lookouts spot them instantly, howling out a frantic alarm to warn the rest of the clan about the human intruders. Before the guards can organize a defense, Ryoga utilizes bone control, launching sharp skeletal spikes through the air to cleanly silence the scouts. The inner settlement erupts into chaos as orc archers rush to the barricades, letting loose a massive volley of arrows right toward the party. The rookies react instantly. Yuma steps to the front, raising his shield to deflect the incoming projectiles and keep the squad completely covered. From behind the barrier, Yuka notches a flaming arrow, firing a precise shot that ignites a cluster of archers. The clean coordination even makes the floating mini Cronus nod in approval, admitting that the rookie squad is proving to be genuinely useful. Ryoga just assures the tiny deity that under his guidance, these guys are going to grow much stronger. With the backline suppressed, our boy orders his armored zombies to charge the front line. The leading puppet slams into the defenders, delivering a devastating punch that shatters its living kinsman's jaw. Watching the sheer destructive force of the impact, Ryoga is highly satisfied to see that his midnight crafting session is paying off. The living orcs are absolutely terrified to see their dead brothers moving like tanks, but our boy keeps the pressure mounting, sending the rest of his platoon into the fray. A brutal civil war breaks out within the settlement. During the clash, a powerful orc warrior manages to land a heavy blow, cracking the plating of an armored zombie and dropping its armor durability down to 15%. Ryoga tracks the damage instantly. He casts bone armor from a distance, channeling his spirit power into the decaying minion to repair the structural damage and bump its defensive efficiency right back up by 20%. An instant later, he triggers flesh writhing on the loose meat scattering the battlefield. The detached chunks of flesh warp and stretch under his command, flying through the air to wrap tightly around the limbs of the living orcs like leeches. The sudden suffocating weight completely restricts the monster's movements, leaving them frustrated. Yuma stands behind his shield, totally struck with awe by the sheer complexity of the spell. It proves that our hero isn't just relying on brute strength. His tactical skill and micromanagement are on an entirely different level. Now that the ordinary foot soldiers are completely taken care of, the ground begins to shatter. The orc chieftain steps forward, completely furious at the slaughter of his tribe. With a deafening roar, the boss activates his berserker mode. Ryoga's system interface immediately flashes a crimson warning, alerting him that the chieftain is currently evolving into a dangerous, special variant boss. But instead of tensing up, our boy has been waiting for this exact transformation the entire time. The orc chieftain rushes straight toward him, raising a battle axe to split him in two. But right in the middle of the swing, Ryoga activates bone control. A volley of sharp bone spears shoots through the air, piercing deep into the chieftain's flesh and anchoring him to the spot. The boss monster drops to its knees with a heavy groan. Roaring in frustration, the boss reaches down to yank the spears out of his torso, but our boy has no intention of letting him break free. Still, keeping 4 separate bone projectiles locked into a special variant boss is a massive tax on his reserves. His spirit power is draining fast, already dropping by 40%. Ryoga calculates the risk, knowing that if the boss manages to tear out even a single spike, he'll regain his mobility. The only clean option is to pierce the heart in one definitive shot. Pumping a massive surge of spirit power into the skill, his reserves plummet by 68% as he forces the embedded bones to drive even deeper into the chieftain's chest cavity. The extra force does the trick. With one final shuddering gasp, the massive orc collapses face first into the dirt. Huffing from the sudden exhaustion, Ryoga immediately steps up to the carcass and unleashes Life Drain. The rushing torrent of the chieftain's special variant life force floods his system, successfully replenishing his spent spirit power while giving his baseline stats another massive boost. Seeing their terrifying leader dismantled so effortlessly, the remaining orc soldiers completely lose their morale. The remaining minions turn on their heels, desperate to escape the settlement. But our boy just activates his reanimation skills, watching the fleeing crowd with a dark smirk. He has absolutely zero intention of letting a single one of them leave this valley alive. Utilizing flesh writhing, Ryoga manipulates the raw tissue of his fallen summons, launching the detached meat across the field to stick tightly onto the fleeing orcs. The sudden suffocating weight completely locks down their movements, causing them to trip and fall helplessly to the ground. The next moment, his armored zombies catch up and systematically wreck the trapped vanguard, leaving nothing but a total bloodbath behind. A short while later, the rookie party is busy extracting the monster stones from the fresh carcasses, completely awed by the sheer size of the haul and realizing they just hit the ultimate jackpot. Ryoga, meanwhile, inspects his unique drop from the chieftain, the Blood Axe. It's a high-tier rare item with a brutal passive. When infused with curse magic, it exponentially boosts the user's raw strength stats, growing progressively more powerful the more blood it drinks. It is an incredible piece of loot for his growing arsenal. Satisfied, our boy leaves the heavy labor of handling the prize money to Yuma, letting the rookies know he has to step away to finally meet his acquaintance. He pushes deeper into the valley until he stops before a massive ancient tree. Ryoga tries to casually lure whatever is hiding inside the bark to show itself, but when the forest remains dead silent, he decides to initiate contact with a little violence. He summons a volley of sharp bone shards, driving them straight into the trunk. Instantly, dark energy begins oozing from the lacerated bark. Aggressed by the attack, a spectral entity finally manifests, glaring at our hero and demanding to know his identity. Our boy remains completely unfazed, calmly addressing the ghost by his legendary title, the Magic Hunter, Kashiwagi Saraku. The Phantom freezes, completely taken aback as to how a modern kid could possibly know his true name. Our boy casually claims he read all about him in the history books, noting that Kashiwagi was the iconic hero who single-handedly held the perimeter line against the Northern Monster Wave 35 years ago. In reality, Ryoga knows him personally because, in his previous timeline, he reanimated this exact hero's corpse and fought alongside him for years. He even feeds the ghost a small lie, adding that a grand memorial currently stands in Tokyo to honor his sacrifice, ensuring Japan never forgets the hero who kept the country from falling during the early days of the calamity. The flattery works, bringing a deeply satisfied smile to the ghost's face as he realizes his death wasn't for nothing. The spirit softens, asking his actual purpose for tracking him down. Instead of giving a direct answer, Ryoga asks a question of his own, bringing up a prominent name from the local hunter hierarchy, Hakugo Naruhito, the current sub-guild master of the powerful Aragiri Guild. The ghost's eyes instantly flare with raw cosmic fury. The name drags him right back to his final moments alive, when he and his platoon were desperately fighting off hordes of monsters to save trapped civilians. Back then, Kashiwagi was screaming into his radio for urgent backup, begging the Aragiri sub-guild master to send reinforcements to the southern farming district before his squad got completely overrun. But Hakugo flatly refused to provide support, claiming no backup was available. Kashiwagi slowly realized the horrific truth. He and his companions were intentionally used as disposable bait. The guild leadership knew exactly how suicidal the southern district was, using Kashiwagi's squad to buy time so the main forces could secure the safe zones in the north. To make it worse, Hakugo knew Kashiwagi's righteous personality would never allow him to retreat while civilians were still in danger. The voice on the other end of the radio didn't even deny the betrayal. In the aftermath, the Aragiri Guild took all the glory for stopping the wave, writing the casualties off as tragic history while the survivors became rich celebrities. Remembering the betrayal, the Phantom rages, replaying the moment he smashed his radio in a fit of despair, ordered his last remaining comrade to take the civilians and flee, and stayed behind to die alone. Hakugo became a national icon, effectively erasing the magic fighter from the history books. Seeing the opening, our clever hero presses the nerve perfectly, pointing out that Hakugo is a fraud who built his entire career on Kashiwagi's stolen sacrifice and good deeds. The ghost erupts in pure, localized malice, vowing to crawl out of the underworld to tear his betrayer apart if he only had the means. Our boy just smirks, stepping forward to offer a contract. He lets the vengeful spirit know that if it's payback he wants, he came to the exact right place. Without wasting any time, Ryoga offers to form a contract, providing the vengeful spirit with a physical vessel so he can return to the living world and claim his revenge. Our hero reaches into his storage space and pulls out the modified corpse of the Dragonian warrior. Looking down at the draconic vessel, Kashiwagi immediately agrees to the terms, admitting he never imagined seeking vengeance in such a twisted way. However, the former hero attaches a strict condition. Ryoga must never force him to harm innocent people. As long as that line isn't crossed, he will do our boy's bidding however he pleases. Ryoga readily accepts, smiling inward since this is the exact same moral condition Kashiwagi gave him in his past life. It is exactly what you expect from a true hero. With the terms set, the contract seals, and Kashiwagi Saraku officially becomes his newest undead summon. In his past life, Ryoga first bound Kashiwagi's soul to a basic skeleton knight, which only later evolved into a formidable Hell Knight. He always wondered what would happen if he gave the legendary warrior a top-tier, high-spec body right from the start. Now, he gets his answer by merging the hero with the Dragonian carcass. As the beast rises to its feet, the sheer pressure radiating from the frame leaves even Cronus visibly impressed. The ancient titan watches with genuine anticipation, eager to see just how far our boy's necromancy can go. Because Kashiwagi's soul is now fused with the modified Eldritch Dragon Vessel, the summon can simultaneously utilize both draconic traits and his original magic martial arts skill set. Even better, the summon possesses a unique growth trait. The vessel's attributes will automatically scale upward as the soul grows stronger, meaning Kashiwagi can eventually surpass the original baseline power of the corpse itself. Our boy is absolutely thrilled to see this, as this specific evolutionary trait was completely absent back when he bound the hero to a regular skeleton. Checking the interface details, he confirms that Kashiwagi can seamlessly combine advanced martial arts and complex magic without a single system penalty. Ryoga looks up and casually asks the magic fighter how it feels to pilot the new draconic build. The undead warrior tests his new limbs, replying that while the body is undeniably powerful, it still feels slightly inferior to the peak physical strength he possessed in his original life. However, the dragon corpse is technically recognized as incomplete. He wonders if the system views it that way because he used a curse formula to artificially replicate the properties of a true eldritch dragon. Either way, it's a phenomenal starter kit for his endgame army, so he lets the minor penalty slide. Ready to move out, our boy turns around and casually orders his new slave to follow him, calling him a minion. But as Ryoga steps ahead, the massive Dragonian doesn't budge an inch. The legendary magic fighter glares down at him, making it crystal clear that he doesn't appreciate being addressed like a disposable lackey. The two of them immediately get into a petty debate over what the summon should actually be called. Since Kashiwagi flatly refuses to use his old human name, he wants a title that will strike absolute terror into the hearts of his future enemies. Ryoga throws out a handful of options, but the legendary warrior rejects every single one of them. Annoyed by the stubbornness, our boy sarcastically suggests Orochi. The giant lizard man wrinkly rejects that too, but after a bit more back and forth, he finally agrees to the name Fafnir. Exhausted by the unexpected naming committee, Ryoga rubs his temples and urges his new companion to finally get moving. But he freezes in his tracks when Fafnir suddenly stops, refusing to march out into the world completely naked. The giant dragon man spots a massive piece of discarded tent fabric, tearing and knotting it together to fashion a makeshift pair of boxer shorts. Ryoga just stares at him, thoroughly irritated by the undead hero's ridiculous antics. When they finally arrive back at the laboratory, Renya's jaw drops straight to the floor at the sight of the moving dragon cyborg. Our boy casually breaks the ice, informing the speechless alchemist that he simply filled the empty vessel with a suitable soul. The sheer nerdy excitement radiating from the scientist quickly begins to irritate Fafnir, who visibly winds up a fist to punch him into the wall. Ryoga quickly steps in, reminding his giant summon that the annoying nerd is actually a business partner. Before getting back to work, the rookie trio checks in to say goodbye, letting Ryoga know they are heading over to Tokyo to officially liquidate the massive haul of gate items. Our boy gives them the green light to handle the trade. Once they leave, he reaches into his spatial inventory and dumps the massive carcass of the orc chieftain right onto the floor. Renya eyes the fresh meat with intense curiosity, wondering what kind of madness our boy is planning next. But the moment Ryoga playfully offers to satisfy his curiosity by letting him help, the alchemist frantically declines. He clearly remembers his last experience with Ryoga's herbs almost costing him his entire forearm. Despite his loud protests, however, the scientist finds himself grinding down a new batch of medicinal herbs according to Ryoga's strict instructions anyway. He simply cannot suppress his innate scientific curiosity, especially since our boy's methods consistently smash all of his expert expectations. For the next step, Ryoga systematically separates the flesh from the orc chieftain's skeletal structure. Watching the meticulous butchery, Cronus floats closer, correctly guessing that our boy is aiming to forge another skeletal minion. Because the materials come from a fresh special variant boss, the structural completion rate is incredibly high, causing the baseline stats to scale up by a clean 100%. Renya applies the stabilized chemical extract directly onto the raw bones, creating a protective coating that further locks in the material's stable quality. The system interface flashes, informing Ryoga that the reinforced frame has unlocked a specialized trait dedicated entirely to physical defense. Our boy realizes that this is the perfect blueprint for a heavy-duty protector. With a surge of mana, the bones knit together, officially raising a 2-star skeleton guard. Ryoga immediately issues its absolute directive. Its sole duty is to act as a physical shield, guarding his blind spots whenever he is stationary while channeling life drain. The alchemist is curious as to why our boy suddenly switched from flashy zombies to a bare skeleton this time. Ryoga explains the basic economics of necromancy, pointing out that bones are lightweight, incredibly easy to transport, and don't rot over time. Zombies, on the other hand, have a strict expiration date and require constant maintenance unless you want them melting into sludges. Skeletons can last indefinitely as long as he keeps infusing them with basic spiritual power, making them the ultimate cost-effective bodyguards for close-range spells. Seeing that our boy didn't just casually raise a monster but factored in long-term maintenance costs and tactical synergy, Renya finally understands why he is so hopelessly fascinated by the kid's bizarre craft. Seizing the moment, Ryoga tasks the alchemist with watching over the new skeleton guard while he steps out of the lab. He needs to pay a quick visit to the nearest local Pantheon branch. Since his level has rapidly shot up to 16, the Hunter system has issued an automated request for him to claim his next official Holy Class spell. Renya stands completely frozen for a solid 3 seconds as the words process. Then, the eccentric alchemist screams in absolute panicked disbelief, demanding to know how a guy who just butchered an orc corpse to raise a skeleton army is somehow part of the priest class. When our boy dryly comments that he is actually a pretty devout believer, Renya outright refuses to believe it, swearing that there is absolutely no way in hell. To quickly change the topic, Ryoga asks about the official registration of their new potion. Renya answers that he has already submitted the paperwork because the current market is getting hit with tough competition, so he wanted to lock it in before more rookies pop up to steal their thunder. The only hurdle left is advertising, but the next major pharmaceutical exhibition isn't until next year. To solve this bottleneck, Ryoga asks for a few sample vials so he can casually advertise the brew whenever a good opportunity arises. Renya hands the potions over immediately, while our boy greedily daydreams about the massive mountain of cash he is about to rake in, knowing money makes the world go round. Looking at the purely evil expression washing over his face, Renya silently questions yet again whether this guy is actually a priest. With the sample secured, Ryoga heads straight over to the local Pantheon. The Pantheon structures suddenly appeared right after the Great Cataclysm, serving as sacred hubs where hunters gather to receive divine spells and blessings directly from their guardian constellations. As he steps inside, our boy glances at the merchants selling various objects meant for divine offerings. The ancient titan Cronus chimes in from his shoulder, commenting that he doesn't sense even a single shred of actual divine presence from any of those so-called relics. Ryoga agrees, wondering why humans even bother leaving these useless, overpriced trinkets on the ground. Brushing past the shops, he approaches the main staircase, which stretches upwards so high that the end isn't even visible. Our boy instantly complains about the complete lack of an elevator or an escalator, struggling to comprehend why the system forces hunters to put so much physical effort into meeting the constellations. He figures it is probably just a cheap psychological trick to force them to show their devotion, a harsh excuse that even Cronus finds a bit ridiculous. Thoroughly exhausted and only halfway up the climb, Ryoga jokes to his patron that he better not get struck by a stray bolt of lightning just for complaining. He inwardly promises to break this entire place to pieces if he doesn't get a top-tier reward after all this brutal stair climbing. Pushing through the fatigue, he finally reaches the absolute peak of the tower. The moment he steps onto the altar, his system interface violently blinks as a barrage of notifications from the watching deities floods his vision. The wealthy constellations openly express their disgust at his dark aura. The constellations who veil death eye him with deep suspicion, and the ancient lore masters of Abydos explicitly express their displeasure. Cronus finds the hostile reception absolutely hilarious, prompting our boy to snap at the floating soul to shut up for a second. Ignoring the banter, Cronus drops the miniature act and briefly returns to his true, cosmic form, because it is finally his turn to command the altar. Without wasting a single moment, the old titan officially registers his divine presence into the modern pantheon system under his new title, the Giant Who Defies Heaven. Thanks to the official registration, Ryoga instantly receives a massive system update, unlocking 2 specialized holy spells, Unholy Blessing and Wedge of Retribution. Unholy Blessing functions by hyper-strengthening yin energy to massively boost a target's physical attributes, while Wedge of Retribution acts as a deadly counter mechanism. To activate it, our boy simply needs to take a direct hit from an opponent, which instantly reflects a mirrored portion of that exact damage right back at the attacker. Cronus looks down smugly, demanding to know our boy's opinion on his new holy arsenal. Ryoga expresses his genuine satisfaction, which brings a massive, arrogant laugh to the ancient titan's face. But the very next moment, the system interface drops a cold dose of reality, reminding them that Cronus is currently a completely broken deity who has been exiled from the core divine circle. The prompt informs them that the star needs to acquire massive amounts of achievements and mortal praise in order to truly shine in the global pantheon again. Furthermore, because his current starlight is far too weak to attract standard followers, our boy needs to aggressively raise his patron's divinity stats from scratch. Ryoga instantly turns the tables and taunts the giant, leaving the titan to grumble bitterly about the unfair system mechanics. Regardless of the divine politics, the main goal is accomplished. Our boy is walked out of there significantly stronger than when he entered. His business concluded, he steps outside the Pantheon gates to head back to the lab. Before he can even clear the steps, a sudden voice halts him. His old nemesis from his past life, Satake Shigeru, spots him walking down from the altar. Satake steps into his path, aggressively demanding to know exactly what a trash hunter like Ryoga is doing inside a sacred place like the Pantheon. Our boy stares blankly for a second, honestly not recognizing the guy at first glance. Annoyed by the indifference, Satake sneers and reminds him that he was the prominent senior who used to take care of him back in the day. The specific wording triggers a memory, and a dark realization hits Ryoga. He finally remembers this guy, not as a helpful senior, but as the pathetic lowlife who used to ruthlessly extort rookies for money. This guy wasn't just some senior hunter. He was the notorious bully from the orphanage who had made everyone's lives miserable. Ryoga eyes him up and down before asking haughtily if his nose had ever properly healed after the time our boy completely busted it open. For a split second, the memory sends Satake into a blind rage, but he quickly forces a smirk, proudly flashing a gleaming guild badge attached to his lapel, the official proof that he had successfully joined the prestigious Aragiri Guild. Assuming Ryoga is still just some bottom-tier trash, Satake sneers, noting that since he visited the Pantheon today, it's clear they belong to entirely different worlds now. Our boy dryly comments that as far as he's concerned, absolutely nothing has changed, which completely sets the freak off. Satake cocks his fist back, ready to smash Ryoga's face in right on the temple steps. A heavy voice halts him mid-swing. Stepping out from the shadows is Rago Jomon, the captain of the Aragiri Guild's 7th Attack Unit. Jomon coldly reminds his rookie that they are standing directly in the middle of a heavily monitored city street. When Satake opens his mouth to protest, the captain slyly cuts him off, suggesting that if they want to let their fists do the talking, they can easily change the location to somewhere official and have a proper, sanctioned match. Satake hesitates, trying to back out by muttering that Ryoga is just a newly registered rookie who isn't worth the trouble. But our hero cuts right through the excuses, instantly agreeing to the match. Ryoga looks Satake dead in the eye, darkly taunting the bully by asking if he's suddenly too scared to back up his mouth. Completely losing his mind at the disrespect, Satake roars that he'll make sure our boy swallows those words along with his teeth. A short while later, the group arrives at a gym directly affiliated with the Aragiri Guild. Stepping onto the reinforced arena floor, Ryoga raises his hand and summons Fafnir. Our boy casually explains to the bewildered onlookers that since he is a priest class, it's only natural for his divine proxy to do the heavy lifting for him. Satake scoffs, assuming Fafnir is just a standard flashy beast. Eager to show off, the bully cracks his neck and adjusts a gleaming mana necklace and a heavy gold ring, expensive high-spec accessories specifically designed to artificially inflate a hunter's baseline attributes. He barks that a oversized lizard won't save Ryoga from a beating. As both fighters take their stances, the gym's automated arena system chirps to life. Beams of light scan across both Fafnir and Satake, instantly measuring their total health points, HP, and defensive threshold stats on the overhead display monitors. With the parameters locked in, the facility's localized safety barrier hums, ready to automatically deploy the moment either participant sustains a life-threatening blow. The match kicks off immediately. Satake barks a command, sneering that our boy looks absolutely terrified, but Ryoga just stares back with a bored expression, completely tuned out from the bully's nonsense. Fafnir, on the other hand, never expected to cross paths with the Aragiri Guild so soon in this timeline. He sees this as a perfect opportunity to field test the capabilities of his new draconic vessel, mentally asking his master for permission to go all out. Ryoga quickly denies the request, instructing his summon not to end the fight in a single blow because he wants to test a few variables first. Fafnir inwardly grumbles, finding the concept of holding back incredibly difficult with his newfound draconic strength. The next moment, Satake rushes ahead, screaming that he is going to teach the trash his place as he thrusts his spear forward. Fafnir effortlessly sidesteps the weapon. However, the phantom hero is internally taken aback when he recognizes the bully's form. Satake is utilizing Kairag spearmanship, Chapter 3, Reflective Movement. The execution is clumsy, which is why Fafnir evaded it without breaking a sweat, but the bully immediately changed the momentum into Chapter 2, Point Break, driving the spearhead straight toward Fafnir's chest. Up in the stands, Captain Jomon watches closely, inwardly noting that Satake is moving significantly better than he usually does during training sessions. Jomon assumes the rookie match will wrap up in seconds, but mid-strike, Fafnir's claw snaps forward, cleanly catching the razor-sharp spearhead out of the air. He scoffs at the bully, taunting him that his attacks are far too slow to ever land. Satake pulls at his weapon, but it's completely locked in place. Fafnir coldly advises the rookie that because he swings blindly without ever considering his opponent's next move, he would already be a corpse in a real fight. Fafnir winds up a massive fist to shatter the bully's jaw, but remembering his master's order to hold back, he suppresses his output to the bare minimum before driving a punch into Satake's ribs. Even with his power capped, the impact is devastating, sending the bully crashing to the mat in a screaming, pathetic heap. Ryoga steps closer to the edge of the ring, mockingly taunting his childhood bully for still crying like a baby after all these years. Enraged by the humiliation, Satake scrambles to his feet and lunges blindly with his spear once more. Fafnir doesn't even bother to block. He simply slams his massive reptilian foot into the floor, shattering the concrete beneath Satake's feet. The localized shockwave completely ruins the bully's balance. Fafnir glares down, mocking the sloppy stance, before cleanly sweeping his leg forward to snap Satake's shinbone, declaring the little game officially over. As Fafnir prepares a final, crushing blow against the bracing rookie, Jomon suddenly leaps into the ring, throwing up his hands to intercede. Ryoga expected the captain to step in, though it happened a bit earlier than he initially anticipated. The automated arena monitors chirp, officially bringing the match to a close. Jomon immediately kneels beside his groaning rookie, shouting over his shoulder that he is going to call for a high-level guild priest. Ryoga casually steps onto the mat, pointing out that there's no need to call anyone since he is literally a priest himself. Jomon glares at him, sharply reminding our boy that a basic one-star priest's healing spells are completely useless against broken bones. Ryoga obviously knows this, but he recognizes the perfect bottleneck to advertise his product. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out one of Renya's mid-tier potions. Satake's eyes widen in disbelief at the sight of the glowing liquid, knowing a high-spec potion of that caliber usually costs millions on the black market. The groaning bully tries to reject it, bitterly reminding everyone that it was Ryoga's giant lizard that broke his leg in the first place. Our boy casually uncorks the vial, informing them that this specific brew is designed for affordable mass production, so the price isn't an issue. Satake continues to shout, claiming he has never heard of such a product and flatly refusing to accept charity from an enemy. Outwardly, Ryoga maintains a completely serious, professional face, telling the patient to hold still because he is simply trying to help a wounded hunter. Inwardly, however, he is absolutely thrilled to secure a perfect, real-time field test for their merchandise. He pours the glowing liquid directly onto the fractured leg. Jomon watches in absolute breathlessness as the open injury completely seals within seconds, the jagged bone fragments perfectly fusing back together until the limb is entirely unblemished. Witnessing the broken efficiency of the brew, an intense desire to secure the product washes over the captain. He instantly demands to know where a rookie obtained a potion of this quality. Instead of giving a direct answer, Ryoga knows the seasoned veteran is completely hooked. He gauges Jomon's aura, guessing the captain is a solid 3-star hunter, and tosses out a wager. If Jomon wants the source of the potion, he has to duel our boy right here, right now. Jomon lets out a cold laugh, noting that the kid is incredibly arrogant for someone who just won a rookie match. He haughtily adds that he is going to make Ryoga talk regardless, but our hero proudly retorts that the last match was far too short, promising to go completely all out this time around. The second match commences in the exact same fashion. Jomon instantly vanishes from his starting position, rushing ahead utilizing Zephyr swordsmanship, 5th style. He unleashes a relentless, blindingly fast barrage of strikes directly against Fafnir. Jomon is a seasoned veteran. While he was genuinely impressed by Fafnir's reactions against a low-tier rookie like Satake, he knows a massive, heavily armored draconic frame naturally has a structural limit when it comes to speed. The continuous pinpoint impacts begin to take their toll, steadily chipping away at Fafnir's active defense efficiency. As Jomon leaps high into the air to prepare a heavy descending strike, Ryoga watches the flow of combat with absolute focus. A high-tier Dragonian vessel combined with Kashiwagi's heavy infighter martial arts physique is currently a terrible matchup against a high-speed, agile fighter like Jomon. That is the exact reason our boy baited the captain into a duel. He wanted Fafnir to hit a wall so the phantom hero could personally realize the limitations of his new body and adapt to opponents he can't simply overpower with brute strength. Just as Ryoga expected, Fafnir's eyes burn with fierce determination, choosing to use the veteran's oppressive pressure to force his massive new build into perfect synchronization. Our hero is highly satisfied by his summon's unyielding spirit. Deciding he has watched from the sidelines long enough, Ryoga raises his hand and activates Unholy Blessing on Fafnir, flooding the draconic vessel with a massive surge of dark yin energy that sends the summon's baseline attributes skyrocketing into overdrive. With the system confirmation flashing, Fafnir's baseline stats instantly shoot up by a clean 20%. Looking at his display screen, Ryoga can barely believe that a basic holy spell can make his summon this insanely strong. But he isn't done yet. Flipping the inverse mechanics of Unholy Blessing, he applies the spell as a localized debuff directly onto Jomon, forcing the veteran's attributes to plummet by 10%. Jomon feels the sudden suffocating weight crushing his lungs. Realizing this rookie priest can seamlessly buff allies and debuff enemies at the exact same time, the captain seriously begins to question if our boy is actually a 1-star hunter. Sensing the massive power spike, Cronus immediately chimes in to fish for compliments, demanding to know our boy's opinion on his divine magic. Ryoga just taunts him right back, muttering that it isn't too bad for a low-tier constellation. The ancient titan opens his mouth to argue, but our boy completely ignores him to focus entirely on the match. It's time to layer his next holy spell, Wedge of Retribution. Ryoga casts the counter mechanism directly onto Fafnir and urges his undead warrior to go wild. Fafnir grins, more than happy to finally receive the green light. The high-speed clash resumes, but the momentum shifts entirely. Every single time Jomon's sword connects with Fafnir's draconic scales, the phantom counter damage triggers, reflecting a portion of the impact right back into the captain's own body. Jomon grits his teeth, utilizing his years of hard-earned guild experience to fight right through the debuff, but he is completely baffled as to how a 1-star summon is currently overpowering a seasoned 3-star veteran. On the other side of the exchange, Fafnir is successfully dealing heavy retribution damage, but his active defense rate is still steadily dropping from tanking the continuous attacks. The phantom hero realizes he needs to completely forget the speed-focused, evasion-heavy fighting style he relied on back when he was a fragile human. He needs to shift his focus entirely. This massive undead body doesn't possess human limitations, meaning it won't break from a few direct hits. Fafnir decides to stop dodging altogether. He chooses to tank the incoming sword strikes head-on, using the momentum to force the captain into a brutal, close-quarters brawl. Rushing straight through the blade storm, Fafnir closes the distance and unleashes Kennic Combat Arts. Chapter 7, 10-Hit Combo. The raw, explosive sequence of martial arts strikes drives straight through Jomon's guard. The final punch connects with enough sheer power to launch the 3-star captain clean across the ring, instantly vaporizing a massive 52% of his total HP bar on the overhead monitors. Jomon stumbles to his feet, staring at the display in absolute disbelief. A summon of this caliber simply cannot belong to a 1-star rookie. He knows that if he takes even one more clean hit from that monster, the automated barrier will deploy and hand him an official loss. A fierce wave of determination burns through the veteran. There is absolutely no way he can allow himself to lose a public duel to a rookie's summon while holding a proud 3-star rank in the Aragiri Guild. Using his speed to his absolute advantage, Jomon charges right back into the fray, betting everything on the fact that massive summons usually possess lower physical reaction speeds. He needs to close the gap and end this in one definitive strike. Jomon kicks into full speed, blurring across the mat, but instead of throwing a strike at Fafnir, he cleanly passes right by the lizardman, shifting his entire focus to target our boy directly. Ryoga has already anticipated this exact move. Before Jomon's blade can even touch his clothes, our hero instantly triggers the full release of Wedge of Retribution. The sudden activation unleashes a violent kinetic shockwave that slams directly into the oncoming captain, blasting him backward across the gym. The heavy counter damage completely drains the remainder of Jomon's HP bar, triggering the arena's automated safety barriers to signal the official end of the match. A short while later, the shocking news of a mass-produced mid-tier potion reaches the desk of Hakugo Naruhito, delivered by none other than a defeated Jomon. When asked to evaluate the sample, Jomon gives his direct testimony, confirming that the liquid instantly knit bone fractures together and functions with the exact same potency as high-grade potions found in top-tier gates. Finishing his report, the captain drops his head, apologizing for a failure that dragged their proud guild's name through the mud and offering to take full responsibility. Hakugo asks calmly why a simple 3-star hunter losing a gym duel would somehow tarnish a massive powerhouse organization like theirs. Jomon quickly apologizes again, realizing he let his panic get the better of him. The sub-guild master dismisses him on the spot, coldly ordering his demotion down to a regular member. The moment the doors close, Hakugo turns to his assistant and orders a full operation to track down the secret source of this mid-tier potion. He stares intensely at a monitor displaying our boy's profile, genuinely wondering how a mere 1-star rookie managed to defeat a seasoned 3-star class hunter. He assumes that as a member of the priest class, the kid must have somehow gotten his hands on a rare divine beast tier summon. To cover all bases, Hakugo issues an additional order to launch a thorough investigation into Ryoga's background. Meanwhile, back at the training space, our dude is also wondering how the top brass of the Aragiri Guild will react, accurately guessing that the news of the potion has already disrupted their quiet afternoon. His train of thought is interrupted when he notices a thoroughly grumpy expression washing over his undead warrior's face. Fafnir is holding a basic training manual on spearmanship, looking completely displeased. Ryoga casually reveals his plan. He wants to learn advanced combat magic directly from the phantom hero. Fafnir blinks in confusion, entirely failing to see what combat magic has to do with a basic spear manual. Our boy explains that the duel with the bully perfectly proved a massive vulnerability. If an opponent realizes they are losing a fight against a summon, they will immediately bypass the vanguard to target Ryoga instead. In any standard encounter, the necromancer is always the squishiest target on the field. Fafnir actively scoffs at the logic, thoroughly annoyed that his own master is technically weaker than him, and grumbles that our boy needs to start drinking more protein shakes. Ryoga's eyes narrow at the sass. To instantly prove who is actually in charge, he utilizes his skill to make Fafnir's massive arm lift up and move completely on its own without uttering a single verbal command. The brief display of dominance shuts the lizardman up. True to his legendary status as a former magic fighter, Fafnir picks up the nuances of the new weapon style incredibly fast, quickly mastering the basics so he can begin teaching. He tosses the heavy manual straight at Ryoga's head, telling him his very first step is to completely memorize the text. Our boy skims the pages, noting that the system lists this specific text as an easy, dummy-proof guide to foundational spearmanship. However, hidden deep within the basic techniques is the exact path required to eventually unlock a devastating endgame skill, Death Spiral. While a standard genius hunter would normally take several years of continuous practice to perfect a high-tier skill like Death Spiral, Ryoga intends to master it significantly faster. This is the ultimate perk of being a regressor. He already understands the flow of high-level aura. He immediately uses a basic spearmanship skill scroll, installing the core system outline straight into his status sheet. He needs to master the active forms as quickly as possible, though whether his current physical body can handle the strain in real combat remains to be seen. The manual lists a total of 6 distinct combat forms. While Ryoga is completely immersed in reading the system screens, Fafnir suddenly lets out a loud battle cry, leaping high into the air with his spear. Having already perfectly synchronized the martial art with his draconic muscles, the phantom hero descends like a meteor, shattering the concrete floor upon impact. Leaning on the shaft of his weapon, the giant dragon man looks up with a competitive smirk, offering to show his master how a real warrior handles a spear. Our boy ducks at the absolute last second, narrowly evading a fierce overhead swing. Fafnir nods in approval, admitting it's a solid dodge, but points out that he can't actually master spearmanship just by running away. Ryoga shoots him a look, reminding the giant that as a complete beginner, flinching and dodging is the natural reaction when someone suddenly lunges at your face. Besides, he highly suspects Fafnir is only being this brutal because Ryoga used his nonverbal command to force his arm down earlier. Fafnir flatly denies it, claiming this is strictly for educational purposes. It's real combat training, and real enemies are going to come at him with pure killing intent. He challenges our boy, asking if he plans to plead that he's just a beginner when a dungeon monster tries to rip his head off. The logic hits home, making Ryoga pause. The next moment, Fafnir thrusts his spear forward again, barking at him to get ready. Ryoga shifts into a stance, gripping his own weapon as he activates the basic spearmanship system outline, immediately executing the third form, rotational defense. When Fafnir's spearhead strikes, Ryoga perfectly spins his weapon to block the incoming blow. Having successfully deflected the first attack, he instantly prepares to launch a counter-offensive. But before he can even shift his weight, Fafnir seamlessly twists the direction of his shaft and drives a blunt stab straight into Ryoga's ribs. Our boy stumbles back, letting out a sharp yell of pain. Fafnir stands his ground, lecturing his master to never drop his guard until the match is officially over. Ryoga groans, protesting that he already successfully blocked the first strike. Fafnir simply points out that blocking one hit means absolutely nothing if you aren't already prepared to handle the second. The two immediately get into a petty argument about how Fafnir is naturally cheating with his massive draconic stats, but the Phantom Hero barks back, insisting he is systematically scaling his physical output down to match his master's exact baseline level. Accepting the challenge, Ryoga decides to tap into his active system reserves. He triggers Life Drain, flooding his veins with the residual absorbed energy of his past hunts to artificially enhance his physical body. With his reflexes and muscles working on overdrive, he takes a stance and prepares for the next round. Fafnir lunges and Ryoga instantly meets him with the fourth form, Hilt Strike. He locks his spear shaft directly against Fafnir's weapon, successfully neutralizing a follow-up strike. With the Phantom's weapon pinned, Ryoga prepares to execute his counterattack, but Fafnir effortlessly proves him wrong yet again, shifting his leverage to disarm our boy and sweep him onto his back. Standing over him, the Dragon Man explains the flaw. Ryoga was so incredibly fixated on anticipating the second strike that he didn't put enough core effort into firmly securing the first block. Scrambling back to his feet, Ryoga admits the critique is entirely right. Since the passive buff from Life Drain is still surging through his veins, he refuses to take a break and demands another round. Fafnir rushes forward, challenging him to actually do it right this time. Naturally, our boy collects a massive collection of fresh bruises and minor injuries over the course of the brutal afternoon. Later, Ryoga is sitting at a barbecue restaurant with Yuma, who stares in absolute horror at the fresh cuts and dark purple bruises covering our boy's face. Meanwhile, Fafnir silently respects his master's grit, admitting that Ryoga possesses incredible mental strength for not fainting once during that entire hellish regime. The two warriors share a mutual, silent admiration for each other's tolerance, though Ryoga darkly mutters under his breath that Fafnir simply enjoyed beating him to a pulp, an accusation the giant lizard man doesn't even bother to deny. Fafnir telepathically asks his master if he wants to throw in the towel, but our boy immediately shoots down the suggestion. He wouldn't have even started this training if he was the type to quit when things got difficult. For a brief moment, he contemplates permanently boosting his physical baseline attributes by continuously burning life drain energy, but he quickly dismisses the idea. He doesn't want to become overly reliant on temporary system enhancements. His true macro goal is to organically build his physical stats and martial arts proficiency from the ground up, ensuring he becomes significantly stronger than he ever was in his past life. As the dark, fiercely ambitious thoughts swirl in his head, a purely villainous expression washes over Ryoga's face, a look so incredibly terrifying that it scares the absolute shit out of Yuma, who freezes with a piece of meat halfway to his mouth. During the meal, Ryoga casually thanks Yuma for the massive transfer of 15 million yen. Earning that much cash in just 15 days is a wild achievement for a rookie party, but Yuma immediately passes all the credit back to him, knowing they wouldn't have survived a single raid without his carry. Shifting focus, Ryoga asks if any interesting rumors are floating around the local hunter community lately. Yuma nods, explaining that the squad has been actively patrolling the HunterNet, the primary online network where hunters trade intel and track active dungeons. He lists off the current trending topics: the mysterious death of a high-profile hunter in Kamakura, the recent anomalies surrounding the Kagoshima Gate, and a chilling rumor about a hunter serial killer on the loose. Ryoga listens intently but doesn't find a single incident that can help him farm stats quickly. Since he is a regressor, he already has a rough blueprint of every major historical catastrophe scheduled to hit the future timeline, but he is actively hoping to exploit minor, forgotten incidents to stealthily build his power. His interest is instantly piqued when Yuma mentions a high-risk anomaly known as the Forgotten Temple Gate in Wakayama. Ryoga blinks in genuine surprise, failing to recall why that specific zone is still wide open. Yuma fills him in on the bureaucratic mess, explaining that the clearing rights were originally monopolized by the Horizon Guild. However, Horizon has failed to clear the interior for an entire year, and a catastrophic dungeon break is now completely imminent. Unlike a stable static gate, which only spawns monsters periodically under a controlled system, a fluid gate is an absolute nightmare. If hunters fail to eliminate the core boss before the localized mana density exceeds 100%, the dimensional barrier collapses completely, allowing the entire monster army to spill directly into the real world. Because the Wakayama Gate is currently sitting in a critical red alert state, A desperate Horizon guild has officially lifted all entry restrictions, inviting regular independent hunters to enter the fray and help suppress the wave. Ryoga asks if any of the corporate powerhouses are stepping in. Yuma confirms that the country's second-ranked Phoenix Guild and the third-ranked Daybreak Guild are both sending massive elite squads to secure the clear. A sharp memory flashes through Ryoga's mind. From his past life, he knows exactly how this raid concludes. The Phoenix Guild successfully clears the core room, securing an epic-grade treasure known as the Dragon Scale Armor. His expression turns incredibly dark as a ruthless plan forms in his head. This sudden fluid gate crisis is the perfect opportunity to hijack the timeline and snatch the Dragon Scale Armor for himself. A defensive masterpiece of that caliber will serve as the ultimate synergy piece to complement his newly acquired spearmanship. Without hesitating, he orders Yuma to pack up the squad's heavy gear and tents immediately, letting them know they are deploying to the gate first thing tomorrow morning. The next day, the party arrives at the staging ground in front of the Forgotten Temple Gate. The system scanners displaying a terrifying 93% mana density threshold. Ryoga looks around the perimeter, noting the massive sea of mercenary hunters gathering outside the barricades now that Horizon has opened the gates to the public. Instead of pitching a tent to pace themselves like the other veteran squads, Ryoga walks straight toward the glowing event horizon. Yuka runs up to stop him, frantically pointing out that they only packed a maximum of 5 days' worth of rations. The rookies think 5 days is a suicidal timeline to clear a massive temple complex that a major guild couldn't crack in a whole year. Our boy just casts a dark glance over his shoulder, calmly stating that 5 days is more than enough time because he intends to completely finish the raid himself. Before they can cross the threshold, Yuma nudges his shoulder, pointing out a stunning female hunter surrounded by an elite vanguard, the Phoenix Guild's rising star, the prodigy sword saint, Asaka Meyer. The name instantly rings a bell. In the original timeline, this girl is the exact warrior who clears the inner sanctum and claims the dragon armor. In his past life, her raw mechanical talent was praised as something that would eventually surpass even the Phoenix Guildmaster, Marita Takumi. Tragically, she ended up losing absolutely everything in a horrific dungeon accident down the line. Glancing toward the opposite side of the camp, there is another heavyweight contender, Gouda from the Daybreak Guild. This massive brawler is on the verge of earning his legendary title, the Iron Fist, and is universally recognized as one of Japan's absolute peak powerhouses. In other words, the entire roster of future celebrities is currently packed into a single staging area. Yuma swallows hard, as he asks if a small rookie party like theirs can genuinely compete against these absolute monsters. Ryoga assures his vanguard that they are going to play this game entirely on their own terms. He has zero intention of playing fair, and he is absolutely determined to walk out of this dimensional rift with the dragon scale armor in his inventory. With his resolve locked in, our boy commands his team to follow his lead, stepping directly through the swirling vortex of the gate. The party finally steps through the swirling portal and enters the gate. The moment they cross over, Yuka nervously whispers to Yuma, wondering if their terrifying boss is eventually going to turn them into undead puppets too. Ryoga overhears the whispering and darkly reminds them that they are far too weak to ever become high-grade undead. At best, they would just make pretty basic zombies. The rookies stare at him, completely speechless that he can say something so unhinged with a perfectly straight face. While he tells his team not to stress, the entire terrain around them suddenly begins to warp and tear apart. Even Fafnir tenses up at the sudden dimensional shift. Yuka explains that this mechanical reset is the real issue. While the system's official entry requirement is capped at a 2-star rank, the actual clearing difficulty is easily a 3-star nightmare because the internal structure changes once a day, completely shifting the environment and the monster spawns. Ryoga looks around, noting that the dungeon behaves exactly as it did before he regressed. He immediately assigns the vanguard duty to Fafnir, who takes the lead with a competitive grin. Our boy wastes no time layering both Unholy Blessing and Wedge of Retribution onto his giant summon, while Fafnir loudly taunts him, claiming it is his absolute duty to protect his physically fragile master. After pushing into the shifting ruins for a while, Ryoga senses an enemy presence just up ahead. Yuma looks up, instantly recognizing the corrupted figures lurking in the shadows as fallen cultists. Without warning, the first cultist lunges forward. Fafnir steps directly into the strike, ready to trade blows with the monster. Yuma raises his weapon to help, shouting that these variants are incredibly formidable, but his sentence is cut short. With a single explosive fist, Fafnir slams the creature into the stone floor, following up with a punch so devastating it vaporizes the monster's face instantly. Yuma stands there completely shell-shocked, while Fafnir casually shakes out his claw like it was nothing. Ryoga, however, looks thoroughly annoyed. He sharply warns his right-hand summon to stop crushing the monster's heads, pointing out that if he completely obliterates the skulls, our boy won't be able to reanimate them into useful undead. Before Fafnir can argue, a larger wave of cultists floods the corridor. Deciding it's time to join the battle, Ryoga draws the Staff of Grudges, burning a clean 12% of his active mana pool to channel his power. Utilizing bone control, he launches a volley of sharp bone shards, piercing straight through the oncoming cultists' bodies. Since these specific monsters possess incredibly low elemental resistance, Ryoga deliberately infuses the projectiles with a specialized mix of dark and holy attributes to maximize the damage. The strike doesn't kill them instantly, but the opposing attributes cripple their systems, drastically slowing down their movement and attack speeds. Fafnir takes instant advantage of the opening. Noting that the enemies are moving in slow motion while his own baseline stats are operating at a boosted 100%, the giant dragon man systematically dismantles the remaining cultists one by one. He internally thanks his earlier gym fight with the Aragiri captain, realizing that brutal duel was exactly what he needed to fully adapt to his massive new draconic frame. Once the hallway falls silent, Ryoga nonchalantly comments that he simply forgot to use life drain on the corpses during the chaos. Fafnir scoffs, reminding his master that he wouldn't even have the luxury of using his skills if his vanguard wasn't doing all the heavy lifting, so he is owed a proper thank you. Ryoga just gets irritated, inwardly grumbling that the Kashiwagi from his past life was a much politer version than this sassy dragon. Regardless of the banter, the massive influx of dungeon experience pushes Ryoga's character level straight up to 20. The milestone triggers a system alert, unlocking 2 high-tier selections from his library of forbidden knowledge. The first is Dark Wise, a C-grade specialized necromancer passive that exponentially scales his core spiritual power. The second is Dark Rain, a highly efficient utility skill that slashes the continuous spiritual power consumption required to maintain his active undead horde by a massive 20%. These are the absolute perfect tools he needs to speedrun and cheese this entire fluid gate within his self-imposed 5-day deadline. Without wasting a second, he casts his reanimation spells on the fresh cultist corpses, transforming them into a squad of armored zombies. Because the base materials are incredibly fresh, the completion rate is remarkably high, granting the new minions a flat 100% stat increase across the board. Yuma watches the skeletons pull themselves up, curiously asking if cultists, who naturally possess much higher baseline attributes than standard orcs, will make noticeably stronger zombies. Ryoga explains the mechanics, noting that while the quality of the raw physical material is undeniably important, the complexity of the engraving spell matters even more. In other words, at this baseline stage, there isn't a massive difference in output. He then tells the squad they need to aggressively pick up their exploration pace because the temple complex runs incredibly deep. The party pushes deeper into the temple, colliding with endless waves of fallen cultists along the way. Everyone, including Fafnir, throws their full weight into the combat, but the waves of monsters feel completely endless. Suddenly, the stone walls begin to grind and shift again, signaling another structural reset. Yuma panics, yelling that they need to turn around and find an exit before the rooms completely lock them in. But Ryoga commands them to stop. Standing firm in the shifting hallway, he recalls a famous post-gate interview he watched Asaka Mir give in his past life, where the legendary sword saint openly shared the exact secret method required to clear this specific layout. She had explained that while a normal dungeon simply requires you to march to the end and kill the boss, the Forgotten Temple forces you to solve a specific puzzle just to reach the inner sanctum. There are 3 distinct types of monsters roaming the temple. Every time a squad defeats a trio, the monsters drop a unique dimensional token. If a hunter collects exactly 49 of these tokens and places them into a specific altar pillar, the system will automatically open a direct gateway straight to the boss monster's chamber. Ryoga looks down the darkening corridor, spotting a familiar glowing eye pattern etched into the stone walls. He locks his grip on his spear as he guesses that the next piece of the puzzle is about to arrive. Our boy predicts the layout perfectly. As the terrain shifts around them, the next target monsters materialize. A horde of giant floating eyeball known as Demon Eye. The massive eye instantly charges a bright red laser, firing it straight at the party. Fortunately, Ryoga has already figured out its exact attack pattern. He casually raises his hand, deploying a heavy bone shield to block the laser effortlessly. It is an incredibly durable barrier, especially since the structural stabilization extract Renya coated onto the bones allows the shield to hold its shape perfectly against the heat. To his shock, Demon Eye lock their focus specifically on him, charging a coordinated volley. Before the lasers can fire, a massive shadow leaps forward to cover his blind spot. Fafnir stands firm, telling his master to stay hidden behind his back while he takes care of the defense. Fafnir braces for the impact, but he is completely stunned when the concentrated lasers fail to leave even a single scratch on his body. Ryoga smirks, reminding the Dragon Man exactly how much high-grade effort and advanced curse formulas he poured into constructing this vessel. A mere 2-star projectile doesn't stand a chance of melting those draconic scales. Realizing he has absolutely nothing to fear, Fafnir roars, rushing head-on into the floating horde and crushing a Demon Eye to pieces with his bare claw. With the monster dead, Fafnir asks his master if he plans to reanimate it. Ryoga declines, pointing out that crushing the eyeball completely ruins the monster's main weapon, making it useless as an undead asset. Besides, he needs the eyeball perfectly intact to use as a token to open the boss room. As it turns out, the required tokens aren't physical items dropped by the monsters. The monsters themselves are the tokens. To solve the puzzle, they have to physically match the intact corpses of specific creatures with the ancient patterns engraved onto the central pillar. They first secure the intact eyeball corpse for the eye engraving. Next on the pillar is a small, hollow face pattern. Right on cue, the corresponding monster emerges from the shadows, a masked mimic, also known as the Curse of Decay. A dense, suffocating dark aura oozes from the floating mask, enveloping Fafnir and instantly triggering a system penalty that drains his active attributes. Ryoga reaches for his staff, wondering if he should counter it with an inverted unholy blessing, but Fafnir stops him. The Phantom Hero points out that these localized dungeon curses share the exact same elemental attribute as raw spiritual energy. He adds that suppressing the curse using his own innate spiritual power, which is inherently darker and more concentrated than the decay itself. Fafnir takes the initiative, channeling his own dark aura to shatter the Curse of Decay entirely on his own. Ryoga watches the breakdown, highly impressed by his summon's tactical genius. Because the spiritual power of a high-tier undead sits at the absolute pinnacle of the dark magic hierarchy, it naturally absorbs lesser curses like a sponge. The masked mimic panics, launching a desperate physical charge. Ryoga decides to take the reins this time, eager to test a mechanical interaction of his own. He immediately casts Unholy Blessing on Fafnir, but instead of using it as a standard buff, he uses his summon's dark frame as a physical medium to bridge the gap between the incoming curse and his own pool. The moment the masked mimic tries to drain Fafnir's energy, Ryoga reverses the flow of power. The holy attributes woven into his priest class seamlessly flood through Fafnir and drive straight into the mask. The curse begins to convulse violently, and Ryoga coldly reminds it that as a priest, his holy energy is inherently lethal against corrupt entities. With the experiment successfully completed and the curse thoroughly weakened, our boy snaps his fingers, launching a volley of bone daggers to finish it off cleanly. He steps over and picks up the pristine mask. Cronus floats closer, making a sarcastic quip about our boy's absolutely horrible taste in souvenirs. Ryoga ignores the Titan, carefully stowing the mask away since it is the third required token. To open the path, they need to collect a total of 49 flawless monster corpses, without destroying their identifying features. This exact hyper-specific condition is the sole reason why no one, including the entire Horizon Guild, could clear this gate for an entire year. Ryoga honestly has no idea how Asaka Meyer managed to figure out this absurd puzzle in the original timeline, but he is more than happy to steal the solution. Speaking of the devil, Yuma suddenly points down a branching corridor, informing him that the Phoenix Guild is currently engaging monsters just a few rooms over. The party moves to a secure vantage point, watching the elite guild squad clear a chamber. Asaka Mira is at the front of the formation, cutting through a swarm of curses with absolute, breathtaking precision. She channels her elemental aura through her blade, slicing the monsters so cleanly that even Cronus nods in genuine appreciation. Ryoga recognizes the flawless technique as the Gale Sword. It is proof of her world-class mastery. If her blade angle deviates by even a millimeter, the curse would instantly backfire and deal heavy damage back to her. Instead of lingering to watch the show, Ryoga orders his squad to pick up the pace, and the rookies quickly follow him deeper into the ruins. Their sudden movement catches Asaka's attention. She lowers her sword, her sharp eyes tracking the strange rookie party. She wonders if that strange one-star boy has actually figured out the secret mechanic of the temple. Her vice-captain scoffs at the idea, muttering that if a powerhouse organization like Horizon couldn't solve it in a year, a bunch of random independent rookies stand zero chance. He assumes they are just recklessly slaughtering monsters for basic stones. But Asaka continues to stare down the dark hallway where our boy disappeared. Her instincts tell her otherwise. She can feel that the kid has uncovered something massive, and a deep intuition whispers that this won't be the last time her path crosses with his. 5 days pass since Ryoga and his crew first step into the Forgotten Temple. The monster waves are seemingly endless, which thoroughly terrifies the rookie team. No matter how many cultists they put down, the dungeon just respawns them back into the corridors. Fafnir anchors the front line, obliterating one creature with a heavy punch while crushing another beneath his massive draconic weight. Watching the display, Cronus chimes in, commenting that Fafnir honestly possesses far more traits of a traditional hero than Ryoga does. Ryoga just rolls his eyes, reminding the Titan that he is actively putting his life on the line too, before ordering his zombie cultists to march ahead and reinforce the perimeter. He continuously channels life drain on the fresh carcasses, absorbing the residual energy until his character level finally hits 27. He is incredibly satisfied to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, gaining raw power while securing the drop materials. Looking at our boy's creepy, villainous smirk, Cronus sighs, begging him to at least laugh with some dignity, wanting his chosen champion to show a little class. Ryoga offers a fake apology for his lack of elegance, far too busy collecting the required tokens to care. With that final push, he officially collects 48 of the intact monster vessels. He knows the Phoenix and Daybreak guilds are still gridlocked outside, so he decides to seize the window and clear the gate before they realize what's happening. He turns to the rookies and orders them to head back outside to liquidate their gathered magic stones. He uses the excuse that he is staying behind solo just to farm a few more levels. Buying the excuse completely, Yuma and his teammates pack up their gear and exit the portal. Now it is just Ryoga, Fafnir, and his 5 remaining armored zombies deep in the ruins. Fafnir looks around, noticing the stone walls are beginning to crack and grind violently, and suggests they head outside too. But Ryoga flatly denies it, calmly explaining that they are going to clear the entire gate right now. When Fafnir asks how, Ryoga breaks down the strict mechanical conditions of the temple puzzle. The Dragon Man finally understands why his master has been obsessively collecting pristine monster corpses like trophies. Ryoga adds that they have to physically place the tokens into the central pillar themselves, since the mindless zombies don't have the brainpower required for a complex puzzle. Suddenly, Ryoga's eyes widen as a spike of pure danger hits his senses. A localized dimensional shift violently tears through the corridor, instantly vaporizing one of his armored zombies as the dungeon terrain begins to rapidly compress and transfer. Ryoga barks that they need to move now, dashing through the collapsing maze to find the final pillar phase. The structural reset accelerates with terrifying speed, making even our boy tense up as the walls close in. Fafnir yells over the grinding stone, telling Ryoga to throw the tokens to him. Catching the bag, Fafnir uses his massive reach to rapidly slot the tokens into the pillar's engravings. For a horrifying second, absolutely nothing happens. Ryoga grits his teeth in frustration. If the mechanism fails to register, the collapsing dimensional space will crush them to death inside the wall. Just as an invincible system wipe attack is about to trigger, the tokens suddenly flare to life. A hidden trapdoor grinds open, revealing a steep staircase leading into the absolute depths of the underground. They dive inside just as the corridor above collapses into solid rock. They push through the dark subterranean tunnel until they arrive before a massive sealed vault door. Before crossing the threshold, Ryoga turns to Fafnir, darkly warning him that the real fight starts the second they step into that room. Fafnir cracks his knuckles, more than ready to take down whatever boss the dungeon throws at them. Etched into the stone door is the official title of the Inner Sanctum's ruler, the Masked Man, Death Guardian. An incredibly heavy, ominous aura bleeds through the cracks of the door, causing Fafnir to narrow his eyes. Ryoga throws the vault doors open, and a horrific, suffocating sight greets them. The Death Guardian hovers in the center of the cavernous room, immediately unleashing a torrential wave of pure curse energy to welcome the intruders. Fafnir blurs forward, intercepting the curse attack head-on to shield his master. He channels his own dark aura, the physical embodiment of his high-tier spiritual power, and cleanly disperses the incoming decay before it can touch Ryoga, roaring that the monster isn't getting past him. But as Ryoga stares directly at the boss, the giant central eye etched onto the Death Guardian's torso suddenly flashes. A specialized mental curse locks onto our boy's consciousness. Ryoga's vision violently shakes as thousands of dark, horrific creatures manifest out of the shadows, clawing at his mind. Fafnir notices his master freeze up, standing completely still like a statue. He calls out, asking what's wrong, but Ryoga doesn't answer, trapped inside the illusion. The floating masks surrounding the Death Guardian twist into evil, mocking smiles, sensing an instant victory. The boss's central eye begins charging a secondary lethal magic projectile to finish the boy off. But right before the laser fires, Ryoga blinks, his eyes clearing instantly. His passive clear mind skill triggers, cleanly shattering the mental illusion and granting him absolute resistance against the psychological assault. With the playing field heavily tilted in their favor, the phantom hero steps into his turn to fight. The boss's central eye flashes once more, firing another concentrated beam of pure curse energy directly at the vanguard. Fafnir doesn't even bother to block. Channeling his dense dark aura into his legs to trigger a massive physical enhancement, he blurs forward, outrunning the trajectory of the laser before it can even cross the room. The Death Guardian screeches, its eyeball spinning wildly as it tries to track the intruder. But Fafnir is already moving at terminal speed, re-emerging directly behind the monster's blind spot. Coating his knuckles in a dense layer of dark aura, he executes an Iron Fist enhancement and drives a brutal, heavy punch straight into the boss's leg. The cavernous room shakes from the impact, sending the massive entity stumbling. However, as Fafnir pulls his claw back, strange, iridescent bubbles begin rapidly festering across the exact area he just impacted. Within seconds, identical bubbles begin bubbling up across his own knuckles. A sharp system warning flashes across Fafnir's interface, alerting him that his physical structure is actively collapsing due to the Death Guardian's passive synergy skills, ectoplasm and dirty skin. Ryoga has already anticipated this exact defensive counter mechanism. Without losing his cool, he instantly casts a refreshing wave of unholy blessing onto his vanguard, seamlessly neutralizing the corrosive degradation before it can eat through the draconic scales. The boss attempts a desperate close-range sweep, but Fafnir refuses to budge. Standing his ground, he unleashes his devastating 10-hit combo directly onto the exact same spot he just fractured. His fists hammer into the flesh over and over again with systematic precision until his final strike punches a clean, gaping hole straight through the Guardian's leg structure. The abomination lets out a deafening shriek of pure agony. Realizing its signature curses are failing to take root, the monster's rage boils over, and it begins violently charging a massive, room-clearing spell. Fafnir notes that the massive hole in the creature's limb has significantly ruined its mobility, making its movements incredibly sluggish. He catches his breath, stepping back to comfortably evade the oncoming strike. But his eyes suddenly widen as the jagged flesh within the wound begins to rapidly knit and fuse back together. The boss's hyper-regeneration is quickly becoming an annoying headache. Fafnir leaps back, telepathically asking his master for a tactical suggestion. Ryoga is already more than ready to wrap this fight up in one definitive shot. Reaching into his storage, he conjures a volley of sharp bone spikes and unleashes bone control. The skeletal projectiles shoot through the air, piercing deeply into the exact same leg wound before the flesh can fully solidify. The Death Guardian roars in pure panic, desperately ordering them to stop targeting that specific wound. Desperate to clear the room, the boss releases its ultimate curse formula, Dark Wave. A torrential, tsunami-like tide of black malice erupts from its core, flooding the entire chamber. Fafnir instantly steps in front of Ryoga, bracing his massive frame to anchor the defense. Ryoga hooks his fingers, summoning his remaining armored zombies to form a tight, overlapping shield wall around them. But the sheer explosive pressure of the Dark Wave is far too overwhelming. The corrupted tide slams into the perimeter, instantly dispelling the zombies into dust. Using the fading dust cloud as absolute cover, our boy dashes straight through the dissipating curse wave, closing the distance to the monster in the blink of an eye. He triggers the full release of Wedge of Retribution, discharging a massive kinetic counter shockwave that completely gridlocks the Death Guardian, temporarily sealing its movements on the spot. Ryoga immediately barks the order for Fafnir to strike. Fafnir launches himself high into the air, bringing his massive fist down in a devastating gravity-assisted one-hit crush. The explosive impact drives the boss face-first into the stone floor, shattering its core completely. A monumental cascade of system notifications floods Ryoga's vision as a massive chunk of dungeon experience registers, triggering an instant double-level milestone. Thrilled by the rapid growth, our boy marches straight toward the grand altar standing directly behind the boss's throne room, where the primary vault reward awaits. Fafnir follows closely, his eyes locking onto the gleaming prize resting on the stone pedestal, the legendary dragon-scale armor. Ryoga opens his system interface, checking the artifact's item description to confirm it is the exact masterpiece he remembers. Forged from the pristine skeletal remains of an ancient dragon, the armor possesses a rare growth-type attribute and a built-in self-repair mechanism, boasting a flawless durability score of 5,000/5,000. Even better, the item is designed to perfectly synchronize with the wearer's innate mana pool, allowing it to seamlessly alter its physical shape according to the user's explicit will. Our boy steps up and places his hand onto the breastplate. The moment his fingers make contact, the armor automatically triggers its auto-equip sequence, shifting its colors from a neutral sheen to a deep, ominous dark hue that perfectly matches his hidden Necromancer class. The baseline synchronization finishes, listing a standard array of heavy defensive attributes. Strike resistance climbs to level 12, magic resistance reaches level 7, and his overall agility scales up by a clean 10%. Eager to test the armor's dynamic shape-shifting capability, Ryoga closes his eyes and projects a streamlined, form-fitting design in his mind. The heavy plates instantly react to his thoughts, compressing and shifting their density to match his exact preference. The sudden structural compression causes his defensive statistics to violently skyrocket on his screen. His localized strike resistance shoots all the way up to level 47, his magic resistance leaps to level 35, while his overall agility penalty drops down to a mere 5%. Looking at his master standing clad in the sleek, draconic armor, Fafnir remarks that since Ryoga is wearing a high-tier tank build now, he no longer needs to hold his strength back during their daily spear training sessions, since the plates will comfortably keep him from breaking. Our dude shoots him an unamused look, pointing out that the giant dragon man basically just admitted he wants to beat his own master to his heart's content. Fafnir just looks away, not even bothering to deny the accusation. With the ultimate prize successfully secured, Ryoga casually unequips the armor, storing it safely inside his storage ring. As they turn to leave, his eyes catch a strange, wispy dark essence slowly manifesting from the dissolving corpse of the Death Guardian. Outside the portal, the interface informs everyone that the core subjugation is officially complete. triggering an automated closure sequence that will permanently seal the Wakayama fluid gate in exactly 3 minutes. The entire staging ground is in complete, absolute chaos. The crimson sky clears instantly as the automated sirens echo across the camps, notifying the massive crowd of mercenary hunters that the crisis has been averted. Everyone is shouting and whispering, desperately trying to guess which elite guild vanguard or hidden powerhouse managed to speedrun the impossible temple layout. The media and news press are ready to cover the historic clear. As Ryoga calmly steps through the rippling exit portal and steps ahead, Yuma spots him and frantically runs over to meet him. The vanguard catches his breath, excitedly asking our boy if he heard the news that the impossible fluid gate was just successfully cleared. Ryoga casually shoves his hands into his pockets, walking past the panicking crowds with a completely nonchalant expression. He smoothly confirms the news, stating that he is already well aware of the clear, because he is the one who personally finished the job. At first, Yuma fails to process the words, standing completely stupefied as the realization sinks in. The next second, he loudly shouts in disbelief, demanding to know if Ryoga was truly the one who killed the boss. The sudden outburst instantly draws the sharp attention of the surrounding hunters, who turn to look at them. Ryoga quickly reins him in, firmly emphasizing that he has zero interest in the fame and wants absolute secrecy regarding the clear. To sweeten the deal, he even promises to add a portion of the boss's hidden loot value into the squad's upcoming payout. Yuma immediately declines the extra money, arguing that since the rookies didn't participate in the actual boss subjugation, they have no right to touch the profit. Ryoga notes that his team isn't even curious about what the Death Guardian actually dropped. In reality, the boss yielded the Shadow Mask, an item heavily engraved with multiple status curses, and a specialized skill book titled Thrill of the Hunt. The book grants a tracking mechanism that designates a target as prey, allowing the user to trace their exact movements for up to a 10-kilometer radius. Since these dark artifacts are far too specific to share, Ryoga keeps them for himself, though he genuinely respects his vanguard's integrity when Yuma refuses the pity money. A rare smile touches our boy's face as he signals that it is finally time to head home. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the aces of the Daybreak and Phoenix guilds are locked in a heated argument, each fiercely accusing the other of stealthily clearing the gate to steal the glory. Asaka argues that if the powerhouse veterans of Daybreak weren't the ones responsible, she wonders who could possibly possess that kind of firepower. For a brief, fleeting moment, her thoughts spiral back to the strange one-star boy she saw earlier, but she quickly shakes her head and rejects the idea, deeming it an absolute physical impossibility. When Ryoga's group finally returns to the hidden laboratory, the entire place is in a state of absolute chaos, looking as if a localized tornado had just ripped through the workstations. The next moment, a stressed-out Renya rushes toward them, frantically shouting about the madness Ryoga has unleashed. As it turns out, our boy's aggressive marketing stunt with the Aragiri Guild worked a little too well. Word of the miraculous mid-tier brew spread like wildfire, causing not just individual hunters, but multiple major factions to flood the alchemist with bulk purchase orders. When Ryoga casually asks if the influx of business is supposed to be a problem, Renya clarifies that while the advertisement was a massive success, the sheer volume of sudden orders is a logistical nightmare. Ryoga shrugs it off, noting that even if it's a massive hassle, everything is ultimately working out in their favor. The formulation is officially locked in, and they are completely cleared for large-scale mass production. To take things a step further, Renya reveals that he has managed to secure a set of incredibly rare darkness orbs. Renya adds that only a broken, rule-defying class like a necromancer could casually get their hands on resources of this caliber. Ryoga unseals the container, releasing the dark energy which acts as a powerful catalyst to exponentially multiply magnetic and spiritual forces when channeled by a dark attribute user. He orders Fafnir to stand completely still. The giant dragon man complies, though he loudly voices his suspicion that his master is about to do something incredibly weird to his body. Ignoring the complaints, Ryoga channels the raw power of the darkness orb directly into Fafnir's frame. The dense energy acts as a structural bridge, aggressively forcing the synchronization rate between the hero's soul and the modified Dragonian carcass to fuse tighter. With a surge of dark mana, the system screen flashes, confirming that the Eldritch Dragon vessel's overall completion rate has successfully crawled up to 7%. Fafnir tests his renewed muscles, asking why the body still registers as technically incomplete despite the massive upgrade. Ryoga just gives a dark, cryptic warning that if the core orb ever breaks, his soul will permanently dissolve along with it. To abruptly end the ominous conversation, Ryoga suddenly flicks an orb straight at Fafnir's face. The giant lizardman's hand blurs through the air, catching the item with flawless, effortless precision. Ryoga smirks at the sheer speed of the reaction, noting that the increased synchronization is already paying massive dividends. Fafnir turns absolutely furious the moment he realizes the random object thrown at his face is the exact darkness orb keeping him anchored to the living world. Realizing a single drop could have permanently ended his existence, the giant dragon man carefully cradles the glowing sphere against his chest, hyper-fixated on protecting it from even a single scratch. Ryoga smoothly defends himself, explaining that he simply wanted to test the artifact's structural integrity after feeding it his mana, pointing out that he would have no way of knowing if the orb was defective otherwise. Disgusted by the twisted logic, Fafnir calls him a literal devil, a harsh sentiment that Renya aggressively agrees. Deciding it is time to get back to business, Ryoga gathers the rookie team and instructs them to focus on extracting the valuable magic stones from their recent dungeon haul. At the same time, he reaches into his storage and drops the massive carcass of the Death Guardian onto the laboratory floor. He gives the rookies strict orders to use their standard extraction methods, but warns them not to leave a single scratch on the frame, as he needs the body completely pristine for his next project. Yuma watches the massive boss monster settle on the floor, curiously asking if our boy intends to reanimate it into a high-tier undead. Ryoga corrects him, explaining that his current rank isn't high enough to directly enslave a boss of this caliber as a standard zombie, so he intends to forge it into a living golem instead. The ambitious plan completely shocks the Vanguard leader. Ryoga adds that for a complex project like this, he is obviously going to need an expert alchemist. To gather the specialized black market ingredients required for the golem's core, Ryoga needs to visit a notorious Ground Zero. The destination is a ruined territory formerly known as the Saitama Outlet, which transformed into a lawless gray zone district right after the Great Cataclysm. In this chaotic bazaar, government regulations don't exist, meaning anyone can buy absolutely anything as long as they have the cash to back it up. Their specific target inside the zone is a vintage bar managed by a notorious broker known as Madame Shuri. Ryoga knows that while she pretends to be a simple bar owner to the public, she actually commands a massive web of influence within the underground black market. While he isn't entirely sure how powerful her network is in this specific point of the timeline, he is confident she can source the exact catalyst materials he needs. The moment Ryoga and Fafnir step through the bar's entrance, the chaotic interior makes it obvious that a violent brawl broke out just a short while ago. Ryoga approaches one of the lingering thugs, casually demanding to know the current whereabouts of the Madame. The man scoffs, flatly refusing to give up any information while aggressively demanding to know who a random kid thinks he is to ask such questions. Realizing the lowlife isn't going to cooperate through a simple civilized conversation, Ryoga resorts to his usual forceful methods of persuasion. After a very brief, painful lesson, the thug eagerly sings, confessing that Madame Shuri fled the establishment roughly 30 minutes ago because a faction is actively hunting her down. Fafnir frowns, noting that with a 30-minute head start, tracking a professional broker through a crowded lawless zone is going to be an absolute nightmare. Our dude reveals that he already possesses the perfect counter item for this exact scenario. He pulls out the freshly acquired shadow mask, slipping the dark artifact over his face to activate its built-in tracker skill, Soul Chase. The moment the magic triggers, a glowing, ethereal trail of Madame Shuri's unique soul essence manifests in his vision, allowing him to easily lock onto her path. Meanwhile, deep within the desolate alleys of the lawless district, Madame Shuri is sprinting for her life. She is completely out of breath, entirely baffled as to what she could have possibly done to trigger a full-scale assassination order from the Red Spider Syndicate. She knows she is in a critical bottleneck, but she absolutely cannot afford to let them capture her alive. Her luck runs out when she turns a corner, only to find herself instantly surrounded by a dense wall of Syndicate goons. Stepping out from the shadows of the blockade, the high-ranking leader of the Red Spider Syndicate smiles victoriously. Refusing to go down without a fight, Madame Shuri slides a hidden dagger out from her sleeves, fiercely warning the mob that they will all end up in body bags if they dare underestimate her. The Syndicate leader just brushes off the threat with a mocking laugh, claiming she is barely projecting enough baseline mana to tickle them. Madame Shuri challenges him to step forward and find out for himself whether she is bluffing. Before the two sides can violently clash, a calm, casual voice suddenly echoes from the entrance of the alley, startling every single person in the clearing. Ryoga slyly comments that everyone seems to be gathered here in one convenient spot, making it look like a highly entertaining street show is about to begin. The leader warns Ryoga to stay out of their business, since he is nothing but a meddling outsider. Ryoga steps forward anyway, sarcastically thanking the man for being so incredibly polite with his prior warning. The leader grows furious at his smug attitude, assuming the kid is only acting tough because he brought a summon along, throwing a glare over at Fafnir. Losing his patience, the leader orders his minions to go grab him. Fafnir moves instantly. He punches the first goon clean across the alley and effortlessly throws two others into the air. Another Syndicate thug hurls a heavy iron rod straight at him, but Fafnir catches it out of the air and hurls it right back with enough force to pin the man flat against the brick wall. Realizing his men are being dismantled, the Syndicate leader reveals himself to be a fire magic user. He immediately summons a massive torrent of roaring flames, preparing to turn our boy into a pile of ashes. Madame Shuri screams out a warning to our hero, but the leader just grins maliciously, sending the firestorm surging forward and celebrating what he thinks is an instant kill. His eyes widen in sheer horror a second later, as Fafnir walks straight out of the raging inferno completely unscratched. The leader panics, shouting in disbelief that his fire didn't even leave a mark, but he is cut short when Fafnir drives a heavy fist into his torso, crashing him violently into the opposite wall. With the syndicate goons thoroughly taken care of, Ryoga looks over at Madame Shuri. Thinking back to her appearance in his past life, he remembers that she used to sport a massive, severe burn scar across her face, and he now realizes this fire-wielding leader must have been the one responsible for it. By intervening today, he has successfully saved her from that horrific fate. Right on cue, Madame Shuri's bartender finally shows up, apologizing profusely for his tardiness. When he asks about the situation, the Madame quickly explains how the two strangers just completely annihilated their pursuers. Ryoga analyzes the newcomer, instantly sensing that this bartender is significantly stronger than the average street thug. The bartender asks who our boy and Fafnir are, but Madame Shuri can only express her own confusion, though she whispers that they don't seem to be bad people. Ryoga steps forward, making up a story about how they simply came to her bar looking for a drink, only to witness the chaos and follow the trail out of pure curiosity. He tells the Madame to stay still. Channeling the residual energy he saved from his previous life drain hunts, he pours the healing mana directly into her system. She watches in absolute amazement as her HP bar rapidly fills back to full on her interface, causing her to ask if he is actually a priest. Ryoga offers a completely ambiguous answer, while inside his mind, Cronus boasts loudly about how his divine spells are carrying the team. A short while later, the group returns to the vintage bar, and Madame Shuri moves behind the counter to pour a drink as a thank you. Ryoga casually requests a glass of milk on the rocks. The Madame blinks in confusion at the order, dryly telling him that she will just bring him a coffee instead since he clearly doesn't want alcohol. Setting the cup down, she gets straight to the point and asks what he is truly after. Ryoga explains that he wants a VIP ticket to the upcoming underground auction. Instead of handing over a standard ticket, she slides a premium business card. She explains that this card serves as an absolute insurance token within the underground circuit. With her name backing him up, absolutely no one will dare mess with him, save for the Red Spider Gang. Curious, she asks what specific materials he intends to bid on. Ryoga explains that he is looking to purchase a high-grade mana engine, specifically one rated at 3 stars or higher. Madame Shuri frowns, letting him know that he likely won't find an item that rare at the auction. Ryoga sighs in disappointment. If the auction falls through, his only alternative is to manually speedrun and clear a high-level gate that features a mana engine as a guaranteed boss drop. Seeing his frustration, the Madame interrupts and suggests that he take an exclusive request from her instead. She immediately requests that he clear a nearby medium-tier gate, which carries a strict entry restriction of 1 to 3 stars. Ryoga smirks, realizing she is a truly terrifying woman. She is deliberately using him to completely crush the Red Spider Syndicate who just targeted her life. She promises that if he clears the gate, she will personally reward him with a highly coveted MIS-4 mana engine that she already has stashed away in her private vault. It is blindingly obvious that this entire request is just a brilliant revenge plot disguised as a business deal. The catch is that this specific gate sits directly inside Ground Zero, which serves as the primary yard for the Red Spider Syndicate. Attacking the site means Ryoga will become their #1 target. Madame Shuri slyly points out that he can simply wipe out the entire Syndicate branch while he's inside, calling it a perfect win-win situation for both of them. Ryoga calculates the risks in his head. An MIS-4 mana engine is a top-tier, masterpiece-grade component that functions at a 5-star level. To completely hook him, the Madame sweetens the pot, adding a bonus reward of 10 kilograms of rare arcane thread. Accepting the terms, Ryoga takes a sip of his coffee and finalizes the contract. Madame Shuri smiles, guessing by his insane performance that he must be a high-tier 3-star hunter, but her face goes completely blank when he casually reveals that he is actually just a 1-star rookie. Later that evening, the duo deploys to the entrance of the Ground Zero Ant Cave Gate to begin the mission. Madame Shuri provides immediate support by casting her signature lunar sorcery, Butterfly's Dream. The spell deploys a massive, invisible barrier around the sector, completely severing the Red Spider Syndicate's communications and tracking lines within the zone. Near the portal, a Syndicate guard taps his earpiece in confusion, complaining that he isn't getting any response from the Eastern Patrol Squad. He has no idea that Fafnir is already standing directly behind his shoulder. Before the guard can even turn around, the giant dragon man effortlessly finishes him. Madame Shuri admits that Ryoga's strength is truly remarkable, now that they have cleanly bypassed the Syndicate's outer security line. However, she voices her lingering concern, asking if he can genuinely clear a high-risk medium gate all by himself. Exuding absolute confidence, Ryoga assures her that she shouldn't worry, promising he will be back outside in just a little while. The duo steps through the rippling vortex and enters the Ant Cave Gate. Ryoga immediately calls upon his skeleton guards, ordering them to lock down the perimeter and secure their backs. His plan is ruthlessly simple. They are going to hunt down everything moving inside these tunnels, whether it is a dungeon monster or a red spider syndicate hunter. As they press deeper into the cavern, a high-danger creature materializes from which is a red slime. Its system profile highlights a lethal trait, corrosive mucus. Fafnir casually comments that the squishy monster looks almost cute. Ryoga sharply warns his right-hand summon to stay alert, explaining that the creature's slime can effortlessly melt right through iron. The warning makes Fafnir pause, prompting him to ask how they are supposed to kill a liquid entity. Ryoga explains that when a slime lunges to hunt, its body stretches thin, exposing its glowing internal core. To kill it, Fafnir just needs to shatter that specific core. Right on cue, the red slime launches itself forward. Fafnir easily spots the glowing nucleus shifting through the translucent red jelly and drives a brutal, heavy punch straight through the center. The core shatters instantly, blasting the slime into a spray of harmless liquid droplets. Fafnir smirks, thoroughly satisfied with the clean kill, and mockingly points out that since the body is completely liquefied, Ryoga can't reanimate it into a zombie, meaning the necromancer gets 0 credit for this victory. Our boy just scoffs at the Dragon Man's arrogance, reminding him that a physical body is entirely optional when the creature's soul is still intact. Ryoga reaches out, channeling his dark mana to pull the lingering essence straight from the floor into his palm. With a soft chime from the system, the soul transforms into a floating ghost. Ryoga explains that this specific undead variant can simultaneously apply debuffs and direct damage to enemies. Then, Ryoga decides to give him a live demonstration. He commands the new minion to charge. The ghost flies straight toward a cluster of nearby red slimes, enveloping them in a chilling dark mist. Instantly, the monster's baseline attributes plummet by 2%, while their internal exhaustion levels violently spike. Fafnir tenses up, surprised by the sudden drop in the slime's momentum, but notes that a 2% deduction is still relatively minor. Ryoga just clarifies that this is the effect of a single basic ghost. Once he builds an entire army of them, the scaling will be terrifying. Later, deeper within the cave system, a squad of Red Spider Syndicate is busy harvesting high-grade bloodstones. Their unit leader, Kotetsu Osabe, barks at his men to keep their guard up, reminding them that this specific sector yields over 1.2 million yen worth of bloodstones per haul. He notes that their operations were already severely interrupted during the failed hit on Madame Shuri, and he has 0 intention of letting this shift go to waste. When a subordinate reports that their communication lines to the outside world have completely cut out, Kotetsu doesn't panic. He coldly orders the squad to slaughter absolutely anything that gets in their way. A moment later, the syndicate hunters halt in their tracks, thoroughly stunned to find a line of skeleton guards blocking the tunnel ahead. They look around in confusion, knowing skeletons don't belong to the native spawn list of an ant cave. Their confusion turns to pure panic as a swarm of wailing ghosts suddenly materializes from the shadows, circling above their heads. Refusing to back down, Kotetsu orders his vanguard to burn the skeletons to ashes. 4 fire magic users step forward, launching a coordinated barrage of roaring fireballs at the front line. But the lead skeleton guard simply steps into the heat, raising its shield to absorb the entire elemental explosion without budging an inch. Before the syndicate members can process the high defense, Fafnir leaps out from behind the shield wall, joining the vanguard with a terrifying roar. Kotetsu mistakes the massive summon for a basic lizard monster and quickly fires a compressed fireball directly at his chest. But before the spell can connect, Ryoga thrusts his hand forward, conjuring a massive bone spear that pierces straight through the fireball, extinguishing the flames instantly. Kotetsu stumbles back, his face turning pale as he watches a rookie priest casually manipulate high-tier skeletal constructs to negate his magic. Seizing the absolute chaos, Fafnir initiates close-quarters combat. He coats his claws in a dense layer of dark aura and charges straight into the syndicate formation. Moving like a hurricane, he systematically hammers the Red Spider members one by one, executing his 10-hit combo. Within minutes, the half-syndicate squad is completely wiped out. Now only the unit leader with few minions remains standing. Kotetsu stares in absolute horror at the terrifying duo, his eyes widening as he finally recognizes Ryoga's face from the alleyway brawl. He realizes this is the exact same mysterious kid who successfully ruined their assassination plot against Madame Shuri just a few hours prior. Looking at him, the leader assumes that as our boy's strength lies in his summon, so he will finish the summon to defeat him. So he asks one of his subordinates to hold off Fafnir, and the rest of the army will focus on attacking Ryoga. The subordinate rushes to Fafnir with a shield, but his attack is too strong that his punch pierces through the shield. Behind the subordinate, the leader is standing as he uses his fire-binding magic. So now Fafnir can't move, and the rest of the squad rushes to our hero. On the other hand, Ryoga already expects this kind of plan, so he sends a number of his ghosts to the subordinates, which decreases 15% of their strength and 17% of their agility. The next moment, he shoots numbers of bone spears at them, which they block with their blades. Looking at them, he gets the idea that he can't just win with the bone spear against these 3-star opponents. One of them rushes to the skeleton and defeats one of his skeleton guards. While the same man is now rushing to him, Ryoga generates a skeletal spear by his bone control and bone spear skills. Then he summons the skeletal spear and uses the Verdian-style basic spearmanship. He attacks his opponent. To see his man defeated, the leader grits his teeth. Raising his spear, Ryoga challenges him to come to him so he can see the result of his training. Kotetsu refuses to believe his eyes, completely stunned that a mage-class hunter can confidently overpower a seasoned martial artist in absolute close-quarters combat. Desperate to reclaim the narrative, another syndicate member blurs forward, unleashing a heavy pummel strike directly at our boy's chest. Ryoga reads the trajectory perfectly, bringing his skeletal shaft up to block the heavy impact before stepping back to create a comfortable pocket of space. When Ryoga openly taunts him, casually stating that he can eliminate him without breaking a sweat, the syndicate member completely loses his cool. Infuriated by the blatant disrespect, he charges right back into the fray. Activating bone control, our boy conjures several jagged bone spears, sending them whistling toward the leader from multiple different angles. While his enemy frantically swings his weapon to deflect the incoming projectiles, he spots what appears to be an opening in our boy's frontline defense. Seizing the apparent blunder, he channels every ounce of his remaining strength into a devastating heavy smash attack. Ryoga raises his bone spear to block the incoming overhead strike, but the force of the smash shatters the skeletal weapon. However, Ryoga instantly activates his newly acquired dragon-scale armor, forcing the artifact to rapidly compress and shapeshift into a specialized, heavy-density configuration, which blocks the attack. It was a deliberate trap. Having lured the syndicate member into committing his entire weight forward on purpose, Ryoga uses the jagged, broken tip of his bone spear to drive a vicious counterstab straight through his enemy's exposed flank. Then Ryoga commands Fafnir to finish things up immediately. Fafnir wastes no time. Flaunting his dark aura, he winds up a brutal punch that drives straight through the core of the Vanguard subordinate who mistakenly assumed his fire chains could permanently anchor the giant lizard man. Kotetsu frantically weaves another glowing magic circle in a desperate bid to turn the tide. Before the spell can manifest, Fafnir leaps across the cavernous floor, delivering a heavy blow that launches the syndicate leader violently against the stone wall. Refusing to accept a humiliating defeat at the hands of a mere summon, Kotetsu struggles to pull himself up, but Fafnir is already standing directly over him, closing the distance instantly to deliver a final, crushing kick that sends the syndicate commander crashing into unconsciousness. Stepping over the unconscious bodies, Ryoga inwardly admits that the syndicate leader was a remarkably skilled hunter, genuinely impressed that the man possessed enough magical output to temporarily bind Fafnir's movements in real-time combat. He extracts Kotetsu's fresh soul to add to his growing collection, before stowing the physical corpse safely inside his storage ring. With the Red Spider Syndicate patrol completely wiped out, their next task is to officially purge the gate's inner sanctum. The duo marches directly into the main boss room, where the true ruler of the ant cave awaits them. Standing in the center of the damp cavern is a giant red slime, glaring at the intruders with pure, primal fury. The giant jelly stretches its massive body thin to prepare for an aggressive lunge, inadvertently exposing 3 glowing internal cores embedded within its gelatinous frame. A short while later, outside the portal barricades, Madame Shuri and her bartender stand. Ryoga casually walk out of the swirling vortex, proving he successfully speedran and cleared the entire medium-tier gate entirely by himself. Our boy haughtily remarks that the notorious Red Spider Syndicate turned out to be far weaker than he initially expected. Thinking back to how Fafnir effortlessly one-shot the multi-core boss monster the second the core layout was exposed, Ryoga intends to keep the primary boss drops for his private inventory, a condition Madame Shuri quickly approves without hesitation. The conversation shifts to handling the remaining syndicate factions operating in the area. The Madame explains that now that their main regional patrol's communication lines are permanently dead, the surviving members of the Red Spider organization will undoubtedly be on the move to investigate the silence. Realizing the zone is about to swarm with hostiles, they decide to coordinate a swift escape from Ground Zero. Fafnir quietly trusts that a Madame has already figured out a flawless, secure extraction route. Once they successfully slip past the perimeter, Madame Shuri brings the duo back to her private facility to present Ryoga's official contract reward. She activates a heavy generator, and a brilliant, highly concentrated output of pure mana surges from the machine's core. It is a display of next-generation engineering. Turning to our boy, she gives him a blunt warning, letting him know that she won't be covering any technical defects or offering warranties if he discovers a malfunction later down the line. Ryoga doesn't like it, but she smoothly defends herself, explaining that both of them are technically sharing the developmental risk since the machine is an experimental prototype. Ryoga realizes she completely anticipated his macro plan to intentionally use a future malfunction as political leverage to make her owe him a favor. Seeing that she is one step ahead of him, he accepts the terms without any further complaints, and she agrees to have the massive unit discreetly delivered directly to his primary laboratory site. The moment Ryoga steps back inside his hidden facility, a thoroughly relieved Renya greets him. The alchemist mutters that he wouldn't have been surprised if Ryoga ended up returning to the lab as a ghost. Our boy just smiles, stating that instead of becoming a ghost himself, he brought back a brand new one as a souvenir. He reaches into his space and pulls out the newly harvested red slime ghost, letting the wailing, translucent spirit float straight into the alchemist's face. The sudden apparition scares poor scientist. Ryoga casually tells him he better get used to the company, because from now on, they are all going to be working together as a team. The statement only serves to terrify the alchemist even more. Ignoring Renya's frantic protests, both Ryoga and Fafnir turn around and walk out of the main workshop, leaving the trembling scientist completely alone in the dark room with the floating slime spirit. Exhausted from the relentless string of high-speed raids and back-to-back combat, Ryoga finally crashes onto his bed, ready to pass out. The moment his head hits the pillow, a system notification blares across his interface. The alert informs him that his contracted constellation, Cronus, has officially risen in rank, unlocking an exclusive, immediate audience within the Star Sanctuary. Next, the physical world dissolves, and Ryoga finds himself standing directly inside the grand celestial expanse of the Star Sanctuary, facing Cronus. At first, our boy assumes he is simply locked inside a vivid dream, but Cronus quickly corrects him, booming that the rapid influx of recent glory has successfully increased his core divinity, allowing him to pull his mortal contractor directly into his domain. Right on cue, a sudden system quest materializes on Ryoga's display screen. The interface tasks him with securing a holy relic or constructing a dedicated temple to systematically scale up his constellation's divine output that promises to grant an unofficial achievement bonus. Ryoga looks around the star domain, noting that the architecture bears a striking resemblance to a legendary pantheon. While a pantheon functions as a neutral, collaborative gathering hub for various active deities, a sanctuary serves as a completely isolated private domain unique to each individual star. Constellations typically utilize these sacred sanctuaries to bestow blessings upon their contracted mortal hunters. Eager to maximize his active loadout, Ryoga looks up at the Titan and asks Cronus to hand over his personalized holy blessing immediately. Cronus admits that he doesn't currently possess the required system achievements to manifest a blessing of that caliber on the spot. Instead, the ancient star demands that his contractor work for it, instructing him to focus on raising their mutual divinity scores first. Reviewing the strict system conditions, Ryoga calculates his options. He knows that tracking down and securing a holy relic is an absolute physical impossibility at his current level. He decides to focus his macro strategy entirely on building a temple, confident that securing the promised unofficial achievement will give him the exact competitive edge he needs to break the timeline wide open. Ryoga wakes up the next morning to find the rookie team casually lounging around the laboratory, using the facility as a makeshift inn without bothering to get an ounce of permission from a stressed-out Renya. The moment everyone sits down around the main table, the atmosphere grows incredibly heavy, the rookies waiting in tense anticipation to hear exactly what purpose brought our hero here today. Ryoga asks each of them about their core reason for becoming a hunter in the first place. Yuma shrugs and gives a completely realistic answer: the money. Ryoga nods, thoroughly satisfied with the practical mindset, vastly preferring it over some delusional desire to play a righteous hero. The third wheel of the squad tries to quip that if they ever actually wanted to be heroes, they would just follow someone noble, but he cuts his sentence short when Yuma aggressively digs an elbow into his ribs. Now, Ryoga finally lays out his official proposal. He wants to form an official party with them. Yuma mentions that he thought they were already operating as a single unit. Ryoga smoothly corrects him, explaining that they are not officially a party yet, because, up until now, he has simply been paying them standard wages to handle his basic daily chores. Now he wants them to truly fight and grow together. Hearing this, the rookies' faces instantly brighten, and all three eagerly agree to the terms. Ryoga informs them that their first major assignment will require them to spend an entire month operating right on the dangerous boundary line. The rookies get completely hyped up by the announcement. Later, the newly formed party officially departs for the desolate borderlands. As they approach the perimeter of the boundary, Ryoga tells the rookies to keep their questions to themselves until he finishes giving them a brief rundown of his current build. Without missing a beat, he finally reveals the ultimate truth. He is a saint who is simultaneously leveling up as a necromancer. The rookies stand frozen, their jaws dropping as they try to process the information, finding it completely bizarre that two diametrically opposed paths could exist within a single human body. After a moment of stunned silence, they they discuss that Ryoga might literally be the first person in recorded history to ever achieve a dual-class synchronization like this. Then, our boy drops another bombshell, explaining that he needs to build a custom temple right here on the border. Specifically, he is going to construct a necropolis, a literal city of the dead, which will serve as the permanent fortified stronghold for his necromancy operations. He explains that because monsters and hunters are constantly engaging in brutal, fatal clashes near the boundary, the soil is thoroughly saturated with the thick scent of death, making it the absolute ideal environment for a necromancer to thrive. Their immediate task is to survey the land and secure the perfect plot to begin construction. The ideal site needs to be highly defensible, but they can't just build it anywhere. A necropolis requires a location where a powerful spirit vein naturally flows beneath the earth. Ryoga commands Kotetsu Osabe's newly reanimated ghost to keep his guard up and vigilantly watch the surrounding terrain, while Ryoga focuses his internal spiritual power to scan the terrain for spirit vein. As they step further into the gray zone, Ryoga's floating ghost suddenly distorts its translucent features into an incredibly creepy face. Ryoga signals a halt, recognizing the spirit's alarm as a clear sign that enemies are lying in ambush just ahead. A squad of aggressive lizardmen emerges from the brush. Their raw strength is relatively weak, but their movement speed is incredibly fast. Fafnir doesn't care about the numbers. He rushes forward with absolute confidence, roaring that he can take the entire pack down by himself. Yuma frantically shouts out a warning, yelling that lizardmen's scales are naturally coated in a thick layer of slick oil that makes standard physical strikes slide right off. Yuma's sentence gets cut completely short, however, as Fafnir drives a brutal punch clean through the first lizardman's torso, forcing the vanguard leader to instantly swallow his words. The remaining two monsters rush the giant summon. Fafnir effortlessly plants a heavy kick into the ribs of the second lizard, while simultaneously delivering a crushing right hook to the third, instantly ending the skirmish. Ryoga steps forward, immediately activating his dark mana to shape the fresh corpses into a pair of armored zombies. He notes that native monsters tend to gather in larger clusters around areas where the strongest spirit veins flow, proving they are heading in the exact right direction. He orders the party to keep moving. Along the way, they encounter several more patrols of lizardmen, all of whom are effortlessly dismantled by Fafnir, allowing Ryoga's armored zombie army to steadily expand. After a short while, the group arrives at the edge of a remarkably beautiful, secluded pond. Ryoga halts, scanning the area as his eyes lock onto the convergence point of spirit veins, declaring it the absolute perfect location to construct his temple. Fafnir frowns, pointing out that a spot this beautiful is going to stand out a lot, not to mention the fact that the local monster populations look more than ready to violently defend their territory. Ryoga dismisses the concern. He instructs the rookies to sit back and handle the basic camp preparation, preparing to clear the pond himself. Yuma steps forward, arguing that they should help him fight since the sheer volume of monsters swarming the pond is far too high for a single hunter to manage. Ryoga just smiles, letting him know that raw numbers mean absolutely nothing to a necromancer. The next moment, he activates bone control, conjuring a massive storm of sharp bone spears that rains down upon the swarming monsters. The creatures are systematically skewered by the high-tier skill, and Ryoga methodically wipes out every single hostile in the vicinity by the time twilight blankets the borderlands. With the battlefield cleared, Ryoga activates Flesh Writhing, seamlessly separating the meat from the structural skeletons of the fallen monsters. Utilizing the massive mountain of white bone and channeling his advanced bone control, he begins to physically assemble the grand foundations of his necropolis. His macro plan centers on building a massive, towering obelisk that will serve as the permanent core symbol of the entire territory. At that, Cronus reminds him that an obelisk is traditionally a holy monument built to worship Ra, the ancient divinity of the sun. Ryoga acknowledges the history, noting that because the sun represents the symbol of life, it holds the exact opposite concept of death, making it the ultimate twisted symbol for a city of the dead. He decides to fashion it entirely out of dark mana, naming it the Black Obelisk. Cronus sighs, having fully expected this kind of rebellious behavior from his contractor, calling it a glorious act that completely defies natural providence. Ryoga smoothly takes the comment as a compliment. Using the raw bone material, he successfully constructs the external framework of the temple. Now, it is time to forge the complex interior pathways. Suddenly, his system interface flashes a series of urgent warnings. The system warns him that his body is actively consuming a massive, highly dangerous amount of spiritual power to stabilize the structure. Ryoga ignores the alerts and keeps pushing forward, knowing there is only a tiny fraction of the core left to finish. By this point, the massive drain has already devoured more than half of his total spiritual energy reserves, but he refuses to break his concentration. Reaching down into the absolute center where the underground spirit vein flows the strongest, Ryoga forcibly draws the roaring current upward into the monument. With a final blinding surge of dark light, life is officially breathed into the structure, and the grand black obelisk stands fully completed. He has successfully achieved a milestone that completely defies common sense. A brand new verse has been officially etched into the living myth of the giant of the azure sky. The finished building registers a remarkably high degree of completion, instantly boosting his overall performance scores by a 50%. The moment the black obelisk settles, a dense, supernatural fog rolls across the territory, severely restricting the field of vision for any living creatures inside the zone. The rookies look around in absolute bewilderment, completely unable to see a single thing through the darkness, frantically calling out to ask if he actually finished the spell. At the same time, Ryoga's passive undead attribute stats violently spike by a permanent 30%, causing Fafnir to gasp as an immense wave of raw power surges through his dragonian frame. Our boy stands victorious, having successfully pulled off the impossible, but the extreme, unprecedented strain takes a toll on his physical body. Ryoga suddenly stumbles, coughing up a heavy spray of dark blood. A flashing red system warning blares in his vision, alerting him that his core spiritual power has been dangerously depleted to absolute zero. Next moment, his vision goes completely dark, and his body collapses limply onto the ground, prompting panicked screams from Fafnir and the rookies as they all rush forward to catch him. The next morning, Ryoga wakes up inside a camp tent with a splitting, throbbing headache. Before he can even rub his temples, Cronus abruptly manifests inside his mind, shouting about how absolutely hilarious and magnificent it is that they have finally constructed a physical temple. Ryoga winces, flatly telling the deity to lower his voice because it is echoing violently against his skull. Ignoring the complaint, Cronus continues his enthusiastic rambling, deeply amused by the irony that Ryoga used an obelisk, traditionally a sacred monument celebrating the sun and life, to anchor a domain completely dedicated to the forces of death. By twisting natural laws like this, our boy has genuinely defied common logic. Stepping outside into the crisp morning air, Ryoga looks up at the towering monument. With the structure fully finalized, the spiritual connection between Cronus's ascending divinity and his own necromantic authority has officially taken physical shape. The rookies quickly spot him and rush over, their faces flooded with relief. Yuma immediately brings up the unnatural thick fog blanketing the area, explaining that it is completely blinding them and making it impossible to see even a few feet in front of their faces. Ryoga nods understandingly. With a snap of his fingers, he registers the rookies' companion profiles directly into interface. The moment the system synchronizes, the rookie's vision instantly clears. As officially registered members of his legion, they are now completely immune to the blinding properties of the Fog of the Dead. With the Necropolis active, now his maximum undead command capacity has spiked to a whopping 100 slots, all of which can be safely housed directly inside the Necropolis's spatial boundary. Up until now, he had been forced to store high-tier summons like Fafnir inside his dimensional ring, but the temple now functions as a permanent, high-efficiency barracks for his growing army. Furthermore, the monumental achievement has drastically boosted Cronus's core divinity scores. Ryoga can physically feel a massive, heavy wave of raw divine power flowing directly from Cronus into his own veins. But he knows that passive energy isn't enough. His immediate task is systematically strengthening the actual combat power of his frontline units. He turns to his rookie team and bluntly informs them that they are about to undergo a brutal training regime to get stronger. The three of them give him completely blank looks. Ryoga coolly reminds them that if they intend to run with him, they need to actually be capable of surviving high-tier zones, unless they plan on being nothing more than simple chore boys who collect magic stones for the rest of their lives. Without giving them room to complain, Ryoga delegates the tasks. He hands Yuma's defensive training entirely over to Fafnir. Fafnir asks exactly how far he is allowed to push the kid. Ryoga casually gives him a blank check, telling him he has full permission to be more ruthless than he was with Ryoga. As for the remaining two teammates, Ryoga decides he will train them personally. Before kicking off the physical drills, Fafnir demands to know Yuma's innate character trait. Yuma nervously admits that his abilities are strictly locked into pure defense, and he always suffers a massive physical recoil whenever he blocks a heavy hit. Fafnir utilizes his martial arts analysis skill, concluding that the recoil isn't a weakness. It is actually an unawakened repulsion attribute. Fafnir points out that Yuma has the rare latent capacity to infuse raw mana directly into his shield, allowing him to not only maximize his defensive threshold, but violently convert the kinetic impact force into an offensive counterstrike. Fafnir explains that repulsion is a cosmic force designed to violently push two objects away from each other. To demonstrate, he demands that Yuma hand over his shield. Fafnir grips the metal, effortlessly flooding the frame with his dense dark aura, and unleashes a forward thrust. A massive, explosive shockwave erupts from the face of the shield, completely shattering a tree into splinters. Fafnir tosses the shield back to the trembling vanguard, instructing him that he needs to learn how to consciously channel his magic into the shield for offense, rather than just passively taking a beating. Yuma takes a deep breath, planting his feet firmly into the dirt. He hyperconcentrates, pouring every single ounce of his internal mana pool directly into the metal face before slamming it forward. A shockwave successfully shatters a massive tree in front of him. Fafnir nods approvingly but immediately steps forward to deliver a stern lecture. He warns Yuma not to dump all of his magic into a single strike like a reckless amateur, explaining that if he overloads the circuit, the structural back pressure will literally blow his own body to pieces. He barks at him to get back in position and keep practicing the regulation output. Meanwhile, on the other side of the camp, Ryoga turns to his two students to break down their own system traits and skills. He turns to Yuka first. She nervously explains that her primary weapon is a specialized crossbow, and her innate trait is called resonance. This unique trait allows her to tether her soul to a designated party member, temporarily borrowing a fraction of their active magic output to infuse directly into her fired projectiles. Cronus scoffs, claiming that a parasitic, dependent trait like that is completely useless for a solo-focused build. Ryoga outwardly disagrees, knowing that if she learns how to utilize the mechanics properly, the trait is highly capable of breaking high-tier defenses. To jumpstart her build, Ryoga reaches into his inventory and gives her a skill book. Yuka hesitates, pointing out that an advanced skill book like this is far too expensive for a rookie to afford. Ryoga dismisses her worries, casually letting her know that she can simply pay him back once they start clearing high-tier dungeons. The book contains a fundamental skill, telekinesis. Nevertheless, she instantly installs the magical concept directly into her brain. Ryoga lays out her next advanced task. She needs to activate resonance to link with a mana source, coat her crossbow bolt in that amplified energy, and then use her newly acquired telekinesis to actively steer and accelerate the projectile mid-flight. Yuka channels the tether and launches a bolt. As she manipulates the arrow using telekinesis, her eyes instantly widen. The projectile moves with a terrifying, heavy velocity that feels completely different from a standard resonance. Ryoga explains that the extreme velocity spike occurs because she is successfully stacking two completely separate layers of magical acceleration on top of each other, first through the amplified multiplier of resonance, and second through the active driving force of telekinesis. Yuka is completely amazed by the sheer ingenuity of the combo, entirely unaware that Ryoga didn't discover this method on his own. He is simply teaching her the exact legendary signature combat style that her successful future self pioneered in his past life to utilize her lackluster trait. He instructs her to keep firing until her mana pool is completely exhausted. Finally, Ryoga turns his attention to Haibara. The boy shifts nervously under the necromancer's intense gaze, explaining that his unique skill allows him to open a private pocket dimension. He demonstrates the ability, manifesting a tiny rift in the air, but deflates as he admits that his current weight capacity is strictly limited to a single kilogram. His innate trait is registered as spatial inventory generation. At that, Cronus mocks the boy that the kid is literally built to be nothing more than a glorified, low-tier baggage carrier. But Ryoga completely disagrees with the deity's assessment, knowing that under the right guidance, a spatial user can easily transform into a terrifying, high-tier monster on the battlefield. In his past life, Ryoga vividly remembers that the infamous number 2 powerhouse of the Romanov family possessed this exact spatial inventory capability. That man used his infinite pocket dimension to store an entire armada of heavy artillery and high-grade weaponry, effortlessly summoning and swapping weapons in fractions of a second to obliterate entire armies single-handedly. The immediate bottleneck for Haibara is his heavily restricted weight limit. Ryoga calculates that the fastest way to expand a spatial inventory is to systematically consume high-grade elixirs, which is an incredibly expensive method. After thinking it over for a few moments, Ryoga decides to first focus on fundamentally correcting the way Haibara circulates his basic mana pathways to maximize his natural efficiency, telling the rookie to leave the rest entirely to him. 2 weeks fly by in a blur of relentless, brutal training drills. By the end of the second week, the rookies have grown remarkably stronger, their movements completely transformed to the point where they can confidently challenge high-level monsters clad in dense iron armor. Suddenly, a massive herd of armored boars charges out from the brush. Yuma steps forward. Instead of just passively holding the line and taking the blunt trauma, he activates his perfected repulsion technique, driving his shield forward to unleash a massive, explosive shockwave that kills the monster instantly. The remaining boars scramble around the perimeter, charging ahead in a desperate flank. Now it is Yuka's turn. She locks her target, triggers her amplified resonance magic, and unleashes a volley from her crossbow, seamlessly stacking her telekinesis on top of the bolts. A dense stream of glowing arrows whistles through the air, perfectly tracking the one of the moving monsters and striking its vital points with flawless precision, killing it instantly. The moment the monsters drop, their fresh soul essence is automatically pulled through the air, cleanly absorbed by the nearby necropolis. which is now actively functioning as both their sovereign territory and a holy temple. Ryoga watches the smooth execution with a deeply satisfied smile. Seeing his rookie team comfortably hold their own against a high-tier pack of armored boars without Fafnir needing to step in even once proves that his intense training methods have yielded flawless results. Right at that moment, the notification officially recognizes the Grand Domain as his permanent, established sovereign territory. With the territory colonization finalized, a massive influx of completion experience points surges into his core profile, pushing Ryoga straight to level 50. A brilliant column of dark divine light erupts around his body as his system interface chimes, announcing that he has officially broken past his limitations and entered an entirely new, uncharted realm of power. After breaking past his limits and advancing to a 2-star rank, Ryoga's overall core attributes instantly spike by an additional 20%. However, the sheer volume of experience points required to level up from this point forward has officially quadrupled. On the bright side, the raw scaling of his active undead summons increases along with his rank. He calculates his options, realizing that instead of just relying on standard skeleton guards or vanguard zombies, he can finally branch out into constructing a high-tier golem. With his immediate goals set, Ryoga prepares to head back to the laboratory to begin the technical work. Fafnir is completely miserable about the arrangement, loudly complaining about being left behind on the desolate borderlands to work as nothing more than a glorified security watchman for the territory. Meanwhile, the rookies gather around, eager to know what their next move is now that their intense training arc is over. Ryoga asks about their levels, noting that Yuma has reached level 48, Yuka is at level 47, and Haibara is sitting at level 45. Satisfied with their progress, he calmly instructs them to pack their gear and head straight toward Furujuku. Ryoga breaks it down for them, explaining that a secret hidden area exists deep within the ancient garden sector, providing them with the exact mechanical steps required to unlock the spatial gateway into the legendary proving grounds. Our hero also reveals that the core trial requires them to defeat a high-tier dragonkin. Our boy calmly assures them that they can handle it, but drops a strict warning. The trial operates on a strict one-on-one duel format, meaning their teammates cannot step in to help them once the battle begins. The only silver lining is that the proving grounds carry a safety net. They won't actually die if they fail the trial, and clearing it guarantees a good system reward. After exchanging a series of tense looks, the three rookies steel their resolve and agree to the mission. Before parting ways, the rookies ask what they should do with the massive mountain of low-grade mana stones they have accumulated during their 2 weeks of constant grinding, noting that sorting through a haul this massive will take forever. Ryoga casually tells them to just drop the load and head out, letting them know he already has a specific person in mind to handle the manual labor. That person is none other than Madame Shuri. Miles away, the elite broker stares at her communication device, reading Ryoga's casual text message and wondering aloud when her professional job description suddenly mutated into a personal mana stone sorter. Back at the Hidden City workshop, Renya is working furiously at his alchemical station as usual. Suddenly, Ryoga's voice echoes right behind his shoulder, casually commenting on how remarkably hard the scientist is working. Renya jumps clean out of his skin, spinning around and frantically shouting at his partner to stop materializing out of thin air. Ryoga just reminds him that he was simply too immersed in his research to notice his presence. Shifting gears, Ryoga asks for an immediate status update regarding their mass supply production line for the healing potions. Renya recovers his composure and assures him that everything is running perfectly smoothly, before pausing to note that Ryoga is suddenly speaking to him with a much more casual energy than before. Before the alchemist can return to his paperwork, Ryoga tells him to come along to the chamber, casually announcing that he plans to build a golem right now. Initially, the alchemist blinks in complete incomprehension, but a second later, Renya's eyes go completely gooey as the sheer scale of the project hits his brain. He realizes exactly what our boy is trying to pull off. Unlike standard undead that require constant mental upkeep, a golem can remain semi-permanently active as long as it has a stable internal mana source. Renya can barely believe his ears, pointing out that even the wealthiest megacorporations on Earth are still trapped in the absolute rudimentary stages of basic golem research. Ryoga confidently admits that he can successfully craft one on the spot, but adds a condition. If Renya wants to sneak a peek at the forbidden blueprints, he is going to have to do some physical lifting to assist with the assembly. The deeply curious alchemist doesn't hesitate for a single second, eagerly nodding his agreement. To kick off the procedure, Ryoga reaches into his spatial storage ring and pulls out the corpse of the masked man. Staring at the giant body, Renya suggests that they should lean entirely into a traditional undead reanimation, arguing that the corpse's sheer, monstrous size would provide a massive physical advantage as a zombie. Furthermore, the alchemist is thoroughly confused by the golem proposal, pointing out that authentic golems are traditionally sculpted out of stone or reinforced iron. Ryoga explains that they aren't building a standard construct. They are creating a highly advanced hybrid variant of a golem and an undead entity, a blood golem. a living fortress forged entirely from flesh and blood. Without wasting a moment, Ryoga begins the delicate engraving process. Renya carefully cuts into the corpse's main dermal layers, allowing Ryoga to meticulously carve a highly complex mana circuit directly into the musculature, a first-tier step that is easily the most tedious and critical part of the entire ritual. Once the extensive circuitry is fully carved into the flesh, the next phase requires them to initialize a permanent energy flow. Ryoga's plan centers on embedding the core of his newly acquired MIS-4 mana engine directly into the center of the monster corpse's heart. By anchoring the prototype engine inside the chest cavity, the dead heart will naturally mimic a living pump, continuously circulating a heavy current of raw mana throughout the entire dead body. Ryoga lines up the mechanical engine and begins the intricate procedure of soldering the mystical circuits directly into the biological tissue. Watching the connection ignite, Renya informs him that the internal mana circuits are overloading and burning up from the voltage. Ryoga calmly corrects his panic, explaining that the channels aren't burning out at all. Instead, the energy generated by the engine is perfectly seeping into the deepest layers of the cellular tissue. Once the continuous output from the MIS-4 engine flows flawlessly through the engraved pathways, the golem will be officially complete. Renya stands completely awestruck, staring at the brilliant, glowing fusion of high-tier necromancy and cutting-edge engineering. Their final task over the next few days is to completely alter and reinforce the creature's external appearance. After 3 days of meticulous refinement, the blood golem has been completed. Ryoga pulls up its system profile to review its signature trait, blood consumption. The attribute allows the golem to actively absorb the spilled blood of its victims on the battlefield, causing its physical size to violently expand and dynamically scaling its overall combat power based on the volume of blood it drinks. Ryoga steps forward, demanding that the blood golem speak to him to verify its cognitive functions. To Renya's absolute amazement, the creature shifts its jaw and rumbles a coherent response straight back to its master. Ryoga is highly satisfied that this custom hybrid possesses a consciousness, a massive leap forward compared to the typical corporate golems. Sensing that Cronus is finally ready to bestow a divine blessing upon him, he prepares to head to Pantheon. The moment his consciousness materializes inside the starry expanse of the sanctuary, Ryoga looks up at the massive deity and bluntly demands to know the reason why Cronus pushed him to rush over here so urgently. Now that our boy has successfully anchored a physical temple on Earth and repeatedly defied the natural order of logic, Cronus's core divinity scores have increased. Because of this massive milestone, the deity now possesses the required authority to officially bestow a holy spell upon his mortal contractor. When Ryoga dryly taunts him, sarcastically asking if the mighty constellation summoned him all the way to the celestial plane just to brag about his status, he immediately gets the holy spell. Cronus brags about how this magnificent new spell perfectly proves exactly how powerful and unmatched he is among the stars. However, looking closely at our hero's face, Ryoga doesn't look happy or excited at all. Instead, he is completely bewildered as he desperately tries to comprehend what kind of holy spell it is. Ryoga stares at the new holy spell, Power of the Giant, in disbelief. The skill actively drains a target's life force to boost or restore their physical strength. Despite Cronus bragging about how awesome it is, our boy finds the whole thing pretty useless. He flatly explains to his deity that a necromancer mostly relies on the undead, who don't even have a life force to begin with. It's totally obvious Cronus designed this spell just to flex his own fighting style, considering he's a giant who can actually benefit from it. Cronus blows a fuse, yelling back that it isn't a problem at all. Ryoga just taunts him, saying it definitely won't be a problem since he has zero intention of ever casting it. He walks away from the fuming constellation, casually dropping one last jab calling him completely incompetent. On his way back, Ryoga gets a call from Madame Shuri with a lucrative job offer that has nothing to do with the Red Spider Syndicate. When Ryoga points out that he doesn't work for chump change, she reassures him that the reward is a humanoid ginseng, a top-tier elixir worth over 100 million yen, packed with dark mana refined to its absolute limit. The client specifically requested someone with elite healing abilities. The client turns out to be the Citon Company, a mega corporation with massive influence over mana stone operations and science. The youngest daughter of the chairman, Sarah, has contracted the infamous mummy disease, and every conventional treatment they've tried has completely failed. Ryoga accepts the job. He knows all about mummy disease from his past life. While it's currently considered incurable, it's actually just severe mana poisoning, where a person's body breaks down after prolonged exposure to dense magic. Armed with future knowledge, treating her is going to be a walk in the park. Later, Ryoga waits in the lobby alongside Renya and Madame Shuri. The Madame looks at him with a slight hint of doubt, asking if he's genuinely confident he can pull this off. Ryoga just remains completely confident. Renya is practically gaping at the absolute luxury of the estate, completely blown away by how wealthy the place looks. Madame Shuri turns to the nerdy alchemist, officially greeting him for the first time and praising his incredible talent for developing their healing potion. Renya's entire face literally glows under the compliment. Suddenly, a suffocating aura heavy enough to crush a normal person fills the room. The intense pressure belongs to Fumiki Hoshino, the chairman of Satan Company, and a legendary 7-star magician. Renya breaks into a cold sweat, visibly trembling. The chairman's presence is way more terrifying than a normal 7-star hunter. Fumiki walks over, and Madame Shuri greets him respectfully. Skipping the fake pleasantries, the chairman gets straight to the point as Ryoga and Renya introduce themselves. Fumiki speaks with a cold, blunt tone, admitting that plenty of self-proclaimed experts have walked through his doors claiming they could cure his daughter, only to turn out to be all talk. Ryoga doesn't miss a beat, cheekily replying that Fumiki is lucky, because he's the only truly competent person the chairman will ever meet. The chairman's eyes darken. He asks Ryoga one last time if he can actually save his daughter, making it clear he can't stand to see her suffer any longer. Ryoga casually tells him to just trust him. Fumiki agrees to let him try, but drops a terrifying, dark ultimatum. If Ryoga fails, he won't be leaving the estate alive, let alone walking out with the reward. Renya almost faints on the spot. The guy is a 7-star magician who could snap them like twigs if things go south. But our boy remains cool, completely unfazed by the threat. Walking into Sarah's medical chamber, Ryoga spots a ridiculous number of magic circles humming around the bed. Recovery, mana rest, damage recall, you name it. The very first thing Ryoga does is demand that every single one of those magic circles be shut down immediately. He explains to the chairman that mummy disease causes mana to violently accumulate and contract the patient's muscles. Constantly dumping vitality magic into her body might keep her alive temporarily, but it only feeds the root cause, making a real recovery impossible. Realizing the logic behind his words, the chairman immediately deactivates the circles. As the magic clears, little Sarah looks up at them with weak, pale eyes. Her father gently reassures her that these people are here to fix her up. Ryoga doesn't waste a single second. He barks an order at Renya to set up a transmutation array and position the mana stones. The alchemist jumps into action, setting up the array and using the room's spatial circuits to dramatically drop the local mana concentration. From there, he begins carefully siphoning the excess magical energy directly out of Sarah's body. Fumiki takes a sharp breath as he watches the healthy color slowly return to his daughter's cheeks. Since mummy disease is just mana poisoning, removing the built-up magic handles half the treatment in one go, a delicate feat only an alchemist like Renya could pull off. Inside his mind, Ryoga silently offers a smug nod toward Cronus, taking back his comment about the constellation being useless. Cronus is deeply confused by the sudden change of heart. With the excess magic gone, Sarah is still left with severe muscular damage, and Ryoga happens to have the absolute perfect skill for the job. He never expected to actually use the power of the giant, but it's tailor-made to restore physical strength to a broken body. Ryoga activates the spell, channeling the divine energy straight into Sarah. However, as the spell takes hold, her life force suddenly plunges while her raw physical strength violently spikes by 40%. Everyone in the room gasps in horror. Renya's eyes go wide, wondering if the treatment just completely backfired, as Sarah suddenly screams out in excruciating pain. Seeing his daughter shrieking in excruciating pain and coughing up blood, the chairman instantly surges forward. Ryoga immediately throws an arm out to block him, sternly warning the frantic father that any outside interference right now will cause irreversible, catastrophic damage to her body. Ryoga keeps his composure, but his mind is racing. He obviously can't just blurt out that his divine spell accidentally plunged her life force into the red. Actually, the power of the giant is a double-edged sword with severe trade-offs. Because the spell doesn't naturally offset a life force deficit, he has to engineer a crazy workaround on the fly. His strategy is absurdly bold. He will drink a high-potency health potion himself to massively overfill his own life force, and then use his life drain spell in reverse to transfer the massive surplus directly into Sarah. Once her life force stabilizes, he can continuously convert that fresh vitality into pure physical strength using the power of the giant. The entire process would be 10 times easier if the girl could simply drink the potion herself, but her frail body is nowhere near a condition to digest liquid magic. Ryoga pulls off a high-risk alchemical bridge that only a dual-class saint and necromancer can execute, silently praying the little girl holds on just a few seconds longer. After a tense, agonizing procedure, the intense aura settles, and the girl slowly flutters her eyes open, fully stabilized. Later, Fumiki bows, flooding Ryoga with deep, emotional gratitude for saving his daughter's life. Ryoga casually waves it off, giving credit to the little girl for having the sheer willpower to push through the agony. He instructs the chairman to immediately get her a proper, hearty meal, pointing out that her physical stamina reserves are completely wiped clean. The powerful 7-star magician bows deeply in absolute reverence. The sudden, humble attitude from such a terrifying figure makes our boy incredibly nervous, leaving him completely unsure of how to react. Eager to clear the awkward tension, Ryoga asks if he can claim his reward right away. A few moments later, the chairman personally presents him with the humanoid ginseng. Ryoga beams with joy as he takes custody of the top-tier elixir, marveling at its incredible dark mana purity. Before they part ways, Fumiki brings up a critical question. Can this revolutionary treatment be scaled up to cure other mummy disease patients around the world? Ryoga shakes his head, explaining that it isn't practical because he can't realistically treat every single victim on Earth in one-on-one sessions. Seizing the opportunity, Fumiki proposes establishing a specialized, state-of-the-art treatment facility under the Seitan Company banner. Hearing the offer, Ryoga agrees to teach the company's elite medical team the fundamental principles behind the cure, leaving the actual mass development and refinement entirely in their hands. Thoroughly impressed by his generosity, the chairman offers Ryoga a whopping 10% royalty on all future profits once the treatment is successfully commercialized. Ryoga blinks, genuinely asking if 10% isn't a bit too generous. Fumiki just reminds him that a permanent cure for an incurable disease is utterly priceless. The two shake hands, officially sealing the deal, while Ryoga smirks like a villain on the inside, ecstatic to secure a massive corporate contract with the world-renowned Seitan Company. With the deal locked down, Ryoga returns to the borderlands to check on Fafnir. The moment Ryoga steps into the camp, Fafnir jumps out of his skin, completely startled. He stammers that he didn't expect his master to return so ridiculously early. This makes our boy confused as he dryly fires back that the Dragon Man usually complains whenever he takes too long. Ignoring the reaction for a moment, our boy tosses a high-tier elixir across the camp, telling Fafnir to drink up. The Dragon Man catches the bottle and makes an over-the-top, dramatic expression over receiving such an insanely expensive potion, a reaction Ryoga instantly finds suspicious. Looking closer, Ryoga notices Fafnir's belly looks unnaturally swollen. Cornered, Fafnir nervously confesses the truth. He admits that after beating up a ton of local monsters, he got super hungry and ended up snacking on a small handful of the party's collected mana stones. Feeling immensely guilty, the Dragon Man promises to hunt down more monsters to make up for the loss. Instead of blowing his top, Ryoga's eyes light up with intense satisfaction. He opens Fafnir's stat window and confirms that the Dragon Man actually did the right thing. Consuming the mana stones has massively expanded his total mana capacity, dramatically accelerated his internal mana accumulation rate, and successfully fulfilled several critical growth conditions. Because Fafnir is an undead construct forged with a dragon heart, he doesn't naturally generate his own mana. He has to manually replenish his core by absorbing external mana stones. Realizing this, our guy immediately tells him to save the elixir for later. Fafnir stands there in utter shock, completely stunned by his master's cool reaction. He fully expected Ryoga to lose his mind over lost profits. His master just shrugs it off, explaining that the pocket change earned from selling raw mana stones can't even begin to compare to the immense value of his main vanguard, growing permanently stronger. Moved to tears by the sentiment, the giant Dragon Man wraps Ryoga in a bone-crushing hug, squeezing him so tightly our boy literally can't breathe. Gasping for air, Ryoga breaks free from the grip and immediately calls for Osabe. The noisy, translucent ghost of the former syndicate leader manifests instantly. Ryoga rolls up his sleeves and gets right to work, summoning Osabe's preserved physical corpse and weaving the dark framework of a brand new skeleton. Inside his mind, Cronus watches the process with intense curiosity. Ryoga smiles, admitting that reanimating the syndicate leader as a permanent asset was his true master plan from the very beginning. Channeling his dark mana, he seamlessly fuses Osabe's ghost directly into his original physical corpse, officially unlocking a brand new skill in his personal arsenal, skill fusion. Later, the rookie trio finally returns from the ancient proving grounds, striking a series of bizarre, overly dramatic victory poses. Their triumphant entry gets cut short the instant they spot the newly reanimated entity standing beside Ryoga. The high-tier undead skeletal mage begins loudly spouting chaotic nonsense about ultimate resurrection and dark ruin. Ryoga flatly tells the skeleton to shut his mouth, casually introducing the Grade 2 skeleton mage as Kotetsu Osabe. The rookies recoil in absolute terror, trembling as they wonder if Ryoga is secretly planning to turn all of them into skeletal minions whenever they die. Ryoga doesn't even bother answering their ridiculous paranoia. Instead, he reveals their next major objective. The party is heading straight south. When Yuma nervously asks if they are officially marching back into the heart of Ground Zero, Ryoga gives a sharp, confident nod, declaring that it's time to aggressively expand their sovereign territory. Ryoga reflects on his past life. Even though he held legendary titles like Undead King and One-Man Army, he was ultimately all alone while keeping the Romanov family and the 7 great houses in check by himself. Now he truly understands the importance of having reliable allies to back him up. That is why a single necropolis is simply not enough. Along with building his force, he plans to elevate Cronus into a supreme constellation, a goal the deity wholeheartedly approves of. The crew soon arrive at Ground Zero. Fafnir immediately senses a pack of trolls waiting up ahead. When asked if they can just bypass them, Fafnir answers that sneaking around will be difficult because these monsters have an incredible sense of smell, and there are 4 of them in total. In this world, trolls are 4-star gate monsters that prove incredibly tough to handle due to their insane regeneration speed. Yuka suggests falling back, but Ryoga smirks, letting them know it is already way too late for retreat. They are going to smash straight through the front line. The ground rumbles as one of the trolls, ravenous for human flesh, charges straight at them. Ryoga steps up, eager to test out his newly created blood golem to see what it is truly capable of. He summons the golem into the fray. The blood golem's fist collides directly with the troll's massive club, but the heavy impact instantly crushes the golem's arm. For a split second, the monster thinks it has secured an easy victory, but Ryoga cold-bloodedly orders his undead construct to go all out. Right before their eyes, the golem's destroyed form begins to rapidly reform. Unlike a typical stone construct, the blood golem's body is composed of blood solidified by raw mana. As long as the embedded MIS4 mana engine remains intact, the golem can endlessly reconstruct its physical form, even if its blood gets scattered across the battlefield. This immense, unyielding regeneration is the exact reason Ryoga went through all that trouble to secure the engine in the first place. Watching the clash, Fafnir notes that while the golem's regeneration is impressive, it will only drag the battle out if it can't deal real damage. Ryoga explains that his creation isn't just a simple meat tank. He reveals its secondary ability, Blade Mode, which allows the golem to freely shape the blood in its body into lethal weapons. Instantly, the golem transforms its right arm into a massive, jagged blade and thrusts it clean through the troll's stomach. It immediately triggers blood absorption, violently siphoning the troll's vital fluids into its own system, expanding its physical volume and scaling its raw power. With a single heavy swing, the golem cleanly beheads the troll. As the monster drops dead, the blood golem's internal power rank violently jumps from a 3-star to a 4-star rating. Seeing their brother brutally slaughtered, the remaining 3 trolls fly into a blind rage, roaring to avenge their fallen brother. Fafnir immediately claims the middle troll as his personal prey, declaring that the blood golem can handle the second one, while the third troll will be tag-teamed by the rookies and our boy. Hearing their assignment, the rookies steel their nerves, ready to prove their worth in a real high-tier battle. Ryoga gives the signal to begin the hunt. Yuma charges forward first, planting his heavy shield and activating Moving Fortress to forcefully impact and stall the giant troll. Yuka acts simultaneously, combining resonance telekinesis to launch a volley of magically accelerated bolts straight into the monster's hide, piercing deep into its flesh. Stung by the assault, the wounded troll turns around to retreat, but Hybera steps up to showcase his spatial growth. He opens a precise spatial inventory rift directly in front of the running beast's path. The troll trips over the dimensional distortion and crashes hard onto the ground. With the target immobilized, Osabe steps forward. The skeletal mage conjures a massive, roaring fireball and hurls it straight at the fallen beast, incinerating the troll in a blinding explosion. The rookies stand there wide-eyed in absolute awe. Osabe is technically classified as a grade 2 undead, so unleashing a high-level spell with that much explosive output should be way out of his league. Ryoga explains the mechanical secret behind the power spike. It comes down to the perfect fusion between Osabe's living soul and his preserved physical body. The advanced magic engraved into Osabe's soul from his past life combines seamlessly with his original physical vessel, creating an explosive synergistic bonus upon reanimation. Turning around, Ryoga sees that both Fafnir and the blood golem have already finished off their respective targets. Fafnir immediately eyes the giant magic stones left behind by the dead trolls. The second he gets Ryoga's permission, the Dragon Man pops the massive mana stone into his mouth like candy and swallows it. The absorbed magic flows directly into his dragon heart, expanding his total mana capacity while permanently boosting his baseline physical attributes. Looking at his right-hand man, Ryoga reminisces about his past life. Back then, instead of this dragon buddy, he had reanimated Kashiwagi as a Hell Knight, a tedious process that required swapping out bones every single time just to force a power upgrade. Making his current commander stronger is infinitely easier by comparison. So, Ryoga offers Fafnir all the remaining magic stones harvested from the trolls, which the Dragon Man happily devours on the spot. Instantly, Fafnir's muscles swell and bulk up, which he flashily flexes for everyone to see. Having gorged on the stones, he reaches his current mana intake limit, and his internal dragon heart officially evolves by one whole stage. Overflowing with raw power, Fafnir boasts that he is ready to crush anyone foolish enough to stand in his path. Watching the Dragon Man brag, Ryoga silently wonders whether Kashiwagi was actually the better right-hand man in his previous timeline. Moving forward with their primary objective, the group successfully constructs and anchors their 5th necropolis monument. With this 5th node finalized, Ryoga links all 5 structures into a unified network, transforming the entire vast expanse of land enclosed within the connected necropolis boundaries into his personal sovereign territory. This territorial milestone boosts his maximum undead army capacity by an additional 30%. Within this domain, anyone not explicitly registered as an ally is swallowed whole by a blinding, unnatural fog and completely severed from all forms of communication. Ryoga intentionally stops at 5 monuments, knowing he shouldn't build any more nodes that he can't actively protect at his current stage of strength. Now that all the necropolises are linked as a single system entity, they share a critical vulnerability. If even a single core obelisk is destroyed, the entire territorial network collapses instantly. Ryoga grits his teeth as memories of his past life flash through his mind, recalling how the Romanov family crushed his black obelisk and disabled his necropolis. He vows never to let history repeat itself. With the expansion complete, Ryoga decides it is time to head home. The rookies' faces light up instantly at the glorious prospect of enjoying home-cooked food again. To top it off, Ryoga grants them 2 full weeks of well-deserved time off. As the rookies happily scatter, Fafnir looks hopeful for a little relief of his own, but Ryoga shuts that down immediately. He needs his commander to accompany him somewhere far more important. They head straight to Madame Shuri's private bar. Spotting him, Madame Shuri teases that she might actually be falling for him. Ryoga doesn't buy her playful flirting for a second, even when she reminds him that she is, after all, a human woman. The bartender serves Ryoga his usual glass of cold milk, prompting Madame Shuri to comment on his bizarre habit of ordering dairy in a high-end bar. Ryoga casually sips his drink, plainly stating that he prefers to keep a clear head whenever he is discussing serious business. That instantly catches the Madame's full attention. Our boy brings up the looming threat of the red spiders, who are actively prowling around and posing a direct danger to her operations. He casually offers to wipe them off the map for her. Understanding that nothing in their line of work comes free, Madame Shuri asks for his price. Ryoga reveals his true goal. He wants the power seat currently held by the Red Spider. Actually, Ground Zero is fundamentally monopolized and fought over by 3 major factions: the Red Spider, the Milky Way Bar Syndicate, and the local black market merchant. Ryoga demands that once he eliminates the Red Spiders from the war, Madame Shuri must throw her full organizational support behind his rise to power. Madame Shuri looks at him in genuine shock. The executive members of the Red Spiders are elite, national-level fighters. To claim their seat, Ryoga doesn't just need to push them back. He has to completely annihilate every single one of them. She asks him point-blank if he is truly capable of pulling off a mission of this scale, emphasizing that it is infinitely more dangerous than anything he has done so far. Ryoga just smirks, radiating absolute, unshakable confidence. Seeing that deadly look in his eyes, Madame Shuri smiles and agrees to the deal, pledging her full backing to help him claim the Red Spider territory. She, however, remains deeply interested in what she stands to gain from this whole arrangement. Ryoga answers her simply, assuring her that he will make sure she walks away with an obscene amount of money. Satisfied with the lucrative outcome, Madame Shuri agrees to seal the deal. Ryoga then shifts the topic, asking if the human hunters in Hokuto Prefecture are still up to their usual underground tricks. When she confirms that they are, he instructs her to immediately spread a targeted rumor throughout the underworld that the human hunters are gathering in Ground Zero to launch a massive raid on the Red Spider. He explains that once the Red Spiders hear the rumor, they will naturally recall all their forces back to their main stronghold to defend it. That, in turn, will hand Ryoga the perfect opportunity to wipe every single one of them out in a single sweep. Ryoga's plan works like an absolute charm. Deep inside the Red Spider headquarters, a panicked minion rushes straight into the office of the Syndicate's big boss, Ryo Kamishiro. The minion frantically reports the rumor that human hunters are mobilizing to attack them and seize control of their black herb farm. Hearing this, Ryo flies into a blind rage. The Syndicate has already taken massive hits, failing to handle the situation with Madame Shuri and losing the entire ant cave operation, and now they are actively threatened with losing their final, most precious asset. Ryo furiously assumes the human hunters are targeting them simply because the Red Spiders currently look vulnerable. Without wasting a second, Ryo orders the minion to triple the security perimeter around the black herb farm immediately. The minion hesitantly protests, pointing out that pulling extra guards will force them to reduce their surveillance on Madame Shuri's movements. For his insolence, the minion instantly catches a brutal attack from his boss, who reminds him that the black herb farm is their absolute last standing lifeline. The farm strictly cultivates black herbs, the only domesticated narcotic produced and traded within the entire underworld. Because the plants can only grow in soul-saturated, high-density mana environments, they can exclusively be harvested within the Hokuto region. The sheer financial scale of the black herb business exists on an entirely different level compared to the ant cave operation. Once the battered minion scuttles away to execute the new commands, the Syndicate boss turns around to address a shadowed figure standing behind him named Sho. Sho is the Red Spider's second-in-command, and he calmly steps forward, claiming that he will personally take care of the human hunters himself. Following the CEO's orders in response to growing rumors, a Red Spider patrol unit keeps a tight rotation along the perimeter boundary. Suddenly, the patrol leader notices an unnatural, thick fog creeping across their surroundings. Unbeknownst to them, they have wandered straight into the outer domain of Ryoga's necropolis. The captain feels a deep knot in his gut. His instincts scream that something terrible is about to go down. He mentally recalls his explicit orders from Sho. The second he encounters an enemy, he must immediately shoot off a signal flare. As a 3-star hunter, the captain was initially reluctant to take on a simple scouting run. He orders one of his subordinates to scan the fog for any signs of movement. Using his Hawkeye skill, the scout spots a massive figure standing in the mist and stammers that it looks like a dragonkin. The captain scoffs, refusing to believe it, but the scout quickly updates his report. There isn't just a dragonkin out there, but a massive blood golem and a human boy standing right beside it. Seeing only 3 enemies in total, the captain's arrogance gets the better of him. He decides a signal flare is completely unnecessary for 3 lone targets and vows to handle it himself. Channeling his magic, the captain activates Lightning Shock, Ice Javelin, hurling a volley of razor-sharp electrified ice shards straight through the fog at Fafnir. The attack connects. Because the mist blinds his vision, the captain asks his subordinate to confirm if the dragonkin went down. Naturally, Fafnir stands completely unscratched. The deadly ice shards pierce his outer skin, but he casually shrugs it off, saying that the spell feels like nothing more than a nice, refreshing electric massage. Realizing their surprise attack failed, the captain unsheathes his sword as the rest of the unit are also ready. Fafnir smirks, thoroughly confident he can wipe the floor with all of them by himself. To back up his commander, Ryoga casts Power of the Giant and Retribution Stake simultaneously, stacking multiple holy buffs directly onto Fafnir. At the same time, Fafnir flares his own dense dark aura to reinforce his legs, surging forward at blinding speed. The captain senses the terrifying velocity of the incoming strike, which his scout frantically confirms via Hawkeye. Still trusting in his sword techniques, the captain triggers his signature trait, manifesting a swirling wave of high-voltage electricity around his body. He readies his counterattack skill, completely convinced he is about to slice the dragonkin in half. His smug grin is instantly wiped off his face when Fafnir's fist shatters his defense, driving his face straight into the dirt with a brutal, earth-shaking punch. The remaining guards instantly realize this dragonkin isn't some low-tier pushover. Fafnir dares all of them to rush him at once. The Red Spider guards charge him in a desperate pack, but within a matter of seconds, Fafnir effortlessly beats every single one of them to a pulp, scoffing at how weak these 3-star hunters are. With the guards subdued, Ryoga instructs Fafnir to keep taking down anyone who comes near their perimeter, mentioning that he is going to bury the fallen enemies. Fafnir blinks in genuine surprise, taken aback to see his master showing a rare shred of mercy to their foes. Ryoga takes offense at the assumption, dryly stating that no matter what crimes they committed in life, everyone deserves a proper burial. Moved to tears by the sentiment, as our boy promises that when his own time comes, he will give him a proper funeral too. Meanwhile, Sho receives word that all communication with the perimeter patrol unit has been completely cut off. The news infuriates him. What bothers him most is that no signal flare was ever launched, meaning the patrol team was wiped out so fast they didn't even get a chance to call for help. Sho reviews the updated intel report, which pinpoints a single enemy boy leading 2 high-tier monsters. Knowing his own head is on the line if he fails to handle this before their ruthless boss finds out, Sho realizes he needs to crush this intruder immediately. He issues a base-wide recall order, summoning every available member to the front line, except for the strike team that left with the chairman to hunt human hunters. He then turns to Mido, one of the top Red Spider executives, ordering him to conceal his presence deep within the forest and wait for the signal to strike. On the other side of the woods, Ryoga sends a swarm of invisible ghosts to scout the surrounding terrain. Suddenly, a system notification pops up. One of his ghosts has been forcefully dispelled. Ryoga's eyes narrow. This is the very first time an enemy hunter has actively detected and destroyed one of his spiritual scouts, proving the Red Spiders aren't backing down and have likely deployed a high-level executive. Knowing it's time to move, Ryoga prepares to trigger the corpses he just buried. When he buried the patrol guards, he meticulously connected each of their bodies using thin, invisible lines of magic, forming an underground network designed to conduct his raw mana. Deep within the forest, the entire Red Spider force gathers under Sho's command. Suddenly, one of the guards feels a strange, unsettling vibration in his soul. Seconds later, Sho's assistant senses a similar magical surge echoing from beneath the earth at another point around the clearing. Before anyone can react, Ryoga sends a massive surge of mana pulsing through the buried connection lines. The underground corpses detonate simultaneously in a series of explosive blasts, tearing straight through the live Red Spider troops standing above them. Watching the fiery underground explosion rip through the enemy ranks, Fafnir finally realizes the true, terrifying reason why his master was so eager to give those fallen soldiers a proper burial.